we got started talking about ranked choice voting and how people don't understand how that works. So I guess I'll hear your take on it. Well, actually, you know what? Let's back up. So this is the first time being an interviewer, and I get jumping out of order here. So, who are you, and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Sondra Cosgrove, and I'm a history professor at the College of Southern Nevada at the community college. So that means I spend a lot of time teaching, and I spend a lot of time with kind of goofy students that aren't quite sure what they're doing with their life, but that's what I love about them. And I spend a lot of time doing civic education out in the public.
Yeah, so I saw an interview with you talking about the ranked choice voting on some news program. I don't recall what it was, like just a YouTube clip when I Googled ranked choice voting and hit on videos, and it was probably the first or second video. So
Yeah, it was probably the one on Channel 8
okay.
that I did a debate with the person who was against ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting because what I always found when I was debating people who were a no on ranked choice voting, they really couldn't explain why they were a no. It was just something new. They didn't like it. They thought it was going to be confusing. And oftentimes they were being paid by people who wanted them to be no on 3. And I would just try to make sure I explained not only what it was mechanically, but why I thought it was a better way to do democracy.
Yeah. So should we explain ranked choice voting? So ranked choice voting is where you go and you fill out a ballot with the candidates that you want in the order of preference that you have. And then all of that is taken and fed into a computer, and basically the most preferred candidate comes out the other side, the candidate that the most number of people can agree upon. And so I'll leave it at that for the moment, yeah.
Sure. So ballot question 3 had 2 parts. There was the open primary part, because right now we have closed partisan primaries. That means everything top of the ticket is closed to you if you're registered as a nonpartisan.
Yeah.
So that's what we call independent voters. But in Nevada, that's now our largest group of voters. Yeah. It's 34%, whereas Democrats that are about 30 and Republicans that are about 29. So there's more voters being shut out of the closed primaries than are allowed to vote in them. So that was one thing I really liked about it, is open it up, let people vote. And then it would put everybody on one ticket. So instead of having Democrats on a ticket and Republicans on a ticket, and you only got to pick one, you either had to do Democrats or Republicans, everybody would be on the same ticket, exactly like our down ballot races. Mm-hmm. So if you voted in school board, the judicial races, the mayor of Las Vegas, those are already open primary. And everybody picked one in the primary. So you only get to pick one. But the other thing I really liked with ballot question 3 is it moved 5 people forward. Mm-hmm. So instead of the 2 people with the most money, which is what open primaries top 2 usually gets you, and that's what we got in the city of Las Vegas mayor's race, it lets the top 5 move forward. So that means a lot of that diversity that we would get in the primary, maybe younger candidates, maybe people who are brand new to politics, would probably get scooped forward if they had enough supporters. Mm-hmm. So if they had enough hustle, get out and talk to voters, get in the top 5, you can move forward.
Yeah.
But then, if you put all that diversity into the general election and only do the first person or the person with the most votes wins, somebody could win with 21% of the vote. Uh-huh. No one wants that. So that's where you get to what you just said, the ranked choice voting. All 5 candidates would show up on your ballot. You could pick one and be done if you wanted to, or rank up to 5 in order of preference. And then, like you say, the computer program does the first tabulation. If someone gets to 50% plus 1, you win. If not, then the candidate with the least number of votes drops off. The computer program says, well, of the people who voted for that candidate first, what was their second choice? Their second choice votes retabulate up to their second choice candidate. You run the tabulation again. You just keep doing that till somebody gets to 50% plus 1, and then you're done.
Yeah. So I think the ranked choice thing is probably run based off an algorithm called the stable marriage problem, which was in the 70s. Some mathematicians came up with this. They didn't win the Nobel Prize till 2015. And the reason that I know that off the top of my head, because I actually did not Google this for this interview, is I wrote my own stable marriage algorithm in somewhere between 2012 and 2014. So somewhere around there, I wrote that, and I unfortunately reinvented the wheel there. But it was certainly easier for me to reinvent the wheel having powerful computers as opposed to in the 70s where they just did it with math.
I've talked to people who went to major universities back in the 70s and 80s where they did their student government races based on ranked choice voting and literally hand counted things.
Yeah.
And they said even hand counting, it's not that hard.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yeah. So I made my algorithm. I actually, well, should I tell this story? I think it'll take.
Sure, tell
All
us.
right. All right. There was a company that offers this online training for $7,000. You can take it from this time to this time, and I think it was 8 or 9 months. Their classes are normally $2,500 a class. So for $7,000 to get unlimited classes, if you take 3 or more, you win
You're
the
ahead.
lottery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to do that, and I was self-employed. I could take all the time to take all the training, and so I decided to do that. And at first, I started putting stuff in Excel and trying to plan out my classes, but there were too many options and too many different run times per class at too many different locations for me to do that manually. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to find a better way to do this. And so, and I, was just surfing their website originally. And then I was like, okay, so then I wrote some code and I scraped down all the data from their website and put all the classes into a database. So now I could see all the classes that ran a specific week, or I could compare two classes in their runtimes.
Right.
And then I made a page to be able to kind of see all this. And so then I could see all the classes that ran per week, but that wasn't good enough because that was still too much information. And so I made another system where I could go through and I could give a rank of 1 to 10 per class based on my interest, and I could exclude classes by giving them a -1. And so then I went through and I picked off all the classes that I wanted and I ranked them up. And now it was showing me per week these classes in the order of preference, excluding the ones that I had kicked off. And they had a value, and I could see that, and that made it easier. And then I kept going, and eventually I made the software run through, and it would take multiple passes, and it would go week 1. If this class is a 10 and it only runs one time, especially in my preferred location, put it into that week, lock it off, exclude that week from the list of run through.
Yep.
And it would go down and it would do that. And then it would be going in second preference and third preference all through, and it would lock up as many as it could. And the more that I wrote into the algorithm, the more of these that it could just automatically make the best decision for me based on my preference. And that was a little more complicated because it had more parameters, because I was trying to do it based off of the preference, number of run times, preferred location of that particular class. And then sometimes you could actually have 2 classes in 1 week, sometimes if they were like shorter classes. And so anyway, it went through and it did that. And it gave me the best possible outcome of classes. And I was actually able to scrape another website, and they're an international company, and they have English classes in like Sweden or the Netherlands or something. And so I could take those classes at night. It was like 34 training weeks, and I ended up taking 44 classes worth about $320,000 for my $7,000. So I made money writing this code and being able to learn this stuff.
But you know what? That's the way the human brain actually thinks. But we don't have the computing power in our brain to do it on our own. We have computers that can help us do that.
Yeah.
But what you were saying, you were doing a bunch of if-then statements.
Yeah.
That's the way the human brain actually thinks. So people who kept telling me, oh, ranked choice voting's too confusing. I'm like, no, actually, the way we're doing it now makes no sense. The human brain thinks exactly the way you just said. We do a bunch of if-then statements, but our computing power in our brain can't quite get us to where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
But now we have a machine that does it for us.
Yeah.
It's natural.
It doesn't, the computer doesn't have superior logic. It just has superior memory.
Yep.
Because the whole time it's going and doing this, and it's writing the
can do it
data
faster.
per transaction into a database. Yeah, I can do it faster too. But it's no greater logic. and of course it cannot be because I programmed the logic.
Right. Your logic went into what the
Exactly, yeah.
computer did.
Yeah.
That's the way human brain actually thinks.
Yeah.
And so I kept trying to explain to people when you have it in front of you and you actually do a ranked choice voting demonstration, your brain goes, "Oh yeah, I get this."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not confused.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You just keep going until everybody,
That's why on social media we always get those polls all the time. Which do you like first, cheeseburger or pizza? Pizza. Which do you like second, chicken or fish? Fish. They do that all the time because they know that's the way our brain works, and we will put our finger on one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you did a show of hands per thing and then you started eliminating the low things, it wouldn't be that much different than that.
Exactly.
You might have to do something where to help people understand if they wake up in the morning, there's things that they can do. They can get up and take a shower. They can get up and have breakfast. They can get up and go right to school, right
Have
to work.
coffee. Gotta
They
get up
can
and have
they
coffee.
can get up and they can get dressed. I mean, whatever. So say 4 things. They have to figure out what's important.
Right, and we
And,
just
and they
do it.
do that every day,
Yep.
right? They have
Yeah.
to, and sometimes they can get them all done, but they can't get all of them done at once.
Right.
So they have to figure out, okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get up and I'm going to get dressed. Then I'm going to have breakfast. Then I'm going to go to school. So yes, you've made those decisions,
Right.
but also like it's not complicated.
Nope. It's just
Yeah.
it's how you think.
Well, there's a vested interest to sell you that the idea is complicated.
Oh yeah. The political parties hate it because
Yeah.
of that.
It's anti-partisan because someday I may run for governor. Just we're going to need ranked choice voting first, I think.
No, and that's why I need voices like yours in the mix, because your brain's just going a mile a minute and you're talking about ideas, and people will listen to you because they're so sick and tired of the two candidates to say the same thing over and over. They don't want to actually have a conversation with you, and people just check out and don't vote. They're
Yeah.
sick of it.
And they're ascribed to their leanings and obligations. Well, so if I wanted to run for governor, what I would have to do is I would have to pick a political party. I would then have to go to one of those parties and try to convey them that I'm their best candidate, which I'm not even sure how you begin that process. That's not an easy thing just to go up and be like, "Hey, you should pick me," right? I think I have to raise funds locally to
Yep.
even campaign to be a part of the party, to then be able to campaign in the primary, to then
Why can't you
all
choose
about money.
that you want to run based on ideas instead of a party
See, that's
first?
what I want.
You're like,
Yeah.
I know.
Put your name in. Let's run. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
yeah. Yeah.
That's silly. Okay, the thing that I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna wear is a blue dress today. Well, I mean, I don't even know where to go, and I don't like why does it have to be that specific right away?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and then you have to go through the primaries, and then the primaries. Some of that is about the preference of the party. The party has
The
a hand
preference
in
of
that.
the donors.
Yeah,
So if the donors don't like you in a closed primary, you're out.
yeah. Interesting.
Because they will run mailers against you. They will do horrible ads against you.
Yeah.
Because they do it all the time. I hate
Yeah.
it.
I know that the RFK and Tulsi Gabbard basically, and probably Bernie Sanders too, basically got blacklisted in the
Well, and-
Democratic primaries, right?
Right.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Yeah. So they were kind of stuck, and I guess they still felt that they had sauce, so they've changed it up.
So, I mean, like Nikki Haley. I mean, the Republicans purposely did the extra caucus and kept her out. I had a lot of friends who were not real thrilled about Joe Biden. They were like, oh, I'd be interested in Nikki Haley. And then when I explained to them, no, they're not going to be on the same ticket, they're like, oh, okay, well, then never mind.
Yeah. So you get to the party primary and you're leading or whatever. I mean, how many favors do you owe at that point? You're
You're bought and paid for.
yeah, and your service is to your donors.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure, some part of it's like, well, I imagine some of them, I don't think they're evil people. I think they want to do some good, but also they have to appease this other thing.
Yep.
And also, it's don't rock the boat. So there's only so much change that you can implement. And I think that we need a lot of change in a lot of places. I think
Yep.
it probably generally always that will be true. and they can't do that because they're within the guardrails of their party, and so both parties have a vested interest to can this whole ranked choice voting. Yeah.
Sondra, I want to go back to something you said earlier where you talked about the percentage of people that are in political parties. Is that based on voting records in Nevada?
It's based on voter registration.
Voter registration.
So there's about 30%
Sorry, yes.
of voters who are registered Democrat, about 28.5% are registered Republican, 34% are registered nonpartisan, and then about another 6% are registered with a third party. So like Green Party, American Independent Party, some of those
Is that
kind
based on this last election cycle?
That's the last numbers that I saw were for October of this year.
Very interesting. I had no idea. It's 1/3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically split between
It's a
those
third,
three
a third, a
major
third.
parties.
And yet the parties make it seem like it's 50-50 between the two parties. It's not. It's a third, and a third. What the parties really don't like, especially if you do an open primary, is right now they can say, okay, we're just going to focus on our base. We're only going to talk to them. We're only going to send mailers to them. We're only going to do events for them. If it's an open primary, you got to hustle out there and talk to the nonpartisans too. And figure out what they want and how to get them to vote.
Which is as it should be.
Yeah, and in Alaska, that's what allowed Mary Peltola to get through. She was somebody that nobody really knew. I didn't know who she was. And then all of a sudden she went in an open primary with like 52 people in it and came out number 4. And we all went, well, who is this woman? And then realized she had been in their legislature for about 12 years. People in Alaska knew who she was. She's an indigenous woman. But I got to interview her after she got elected because I discovered that one of my former students was her campaign manager because it's a very small world. And so she did a webinar with us, and I asked her, I said, how do you get out of a primary with 52 people, number 4, when nobody really knew who you were and you didn't have money? She goes, I talked to people. Literally, that was her. I went out and talked to all the voters.
And so she was number 4 in what exactly?
So this was in Alaska. They also had the open primary top 4 move forward.
But how was she at the bottom? You implied that she was at the bottom. She wasn't, though, because she won, though.
She came through. She had to be in the top 4 to get into the general election.
Okay.
So with 52 people on the ballot in the primary, she made it into the top 4.
Okay.
So they moved forward, and Sarah Palin and Nick Begich were the 2 Republicans, and then there was a Libertarian in with her. When they got to the general election, she actually had the most votes in that first tabulation because the Republicans split their ticket. They split the ballot. So about half the Republicans had voted for Sarah Palin and about half had voted for Nick Begich. But that's why you do ranked choice voting, to make sure you're not splitting the vote. You're not having a spoiler effect. And so the Libertarian dropped off, and in that first round of ranked choice voting, you could see who his voters had voted for their second, and it was almost a third, and a third. So those second choice votes tabulated up. Then Nick Begich was actually coming in third. Mary Peltola was at about 49%. She didn't have the 50% plus 1 you need to get to win. So when Nick Begich dropped off, and it opened up in the spreadsheet, and you could see it on the screen because they live streamed this, there was about 2/3 of his votes actually went to Sarah Palin. But then a third of his vote went to Mary Peltola. So a third of the Republicans voted for Mary Peltola, who was the Democrat, not the other Republican. But what was really shocking is almost as many people did not vote a second choice. They voted Nick, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so because of that, Mary Peltola had enough to get over the 50% plus 1 to win. Reporters immediately, we were all online watching this, said, this is you, if you didn't vote a second choice, we want to know why. When they started talking to these voters, they basically said, Sarah Palin's a horrible person. She was terrible to our candidate. I wasn't going to cast a second choice vote for her, even though she was the other Republican. You know, I didn't.
Yeah.
Mary Peltola was a Democrat, and I didn't want to vote for her, so I just said one and done.
Yeah. Well, of course, I also think a lot of people, they're not used to it. So why, if you're not used to the idea that you have all these choices, and doing homework on political stuff it's a time sink, and so you're not used to it. You got to do all this extra homework. Of course, you're going to write in one name. I mean, I think
it's a
about
default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I question some of this, the processes of democracy where we just go based on all this popularity, and what happens, you get a lot of hype, and you don't actually, you get the person that the most people choose, but not actually the person that they would really want, because they
Right.
don't have enough information.
Right.
And it's such a pain to be informed, right?
So one of the other things I like about ranked choice voting is when Mary Peltola told us the way she campaigned was when she went to a parade, she went to a rally, she went to an event. She specifically looked for voters that had buttons or signs that said Sarah Palin or Nick Begich. Walked up to those voters, said, "Awesome first choice. Love Nick, love Sarah. Can I ask you, could I be your second choice?" And if the voter said, I'm not sure what that is, she would explain the system. But then she would say, I think as Alaskans, we probably have a lot in common. These are the things that I really value. Do you value them? And so what I would do if we had ranked choice voting here is I would tell people, if someone hasn't asked you for your second choice vote, don't vote for them. If they didn't take the time to talk to you, don't vote for them. And candidates, if you want to win, you better be talking to people and asking for second choice votes.
Yeah.
You have some hustle.
I don't know about actually talking to people. That's crazy. I mean, yeah, if I ever plan on running for office, I would just make videos. I mean, I guess I would go talk to people. I would engage with people and have a dialogue so that people.
I would have events that you could come to.
Yeah, but I would make videos outlining the problem and my solution and how I arrived at that.
I think it's so important to get out and talk to individual people because those people will vote for you. And I realize that's probably a good idea to have the videos to reach the people that.
Yeah, but you can't
You
talk to
won't-
like a million people. And you
Well,
need,
sure,
Right.
but you need to
there's-
do. I think
Yeah.
that she's right in that it needs to be a multi-pronged approach.
Well, sure, of course. I mean, I wouldn't not talk to people. I just don't know that that would be at the top of my list, right? Like, I don't know that that would be my plan to. I mean, if
That's
I'm,
the way that the people who are running in ranked choice elections, that's what's getting them over the top.
yeah,
And it's not like they're like out there just, solely determined to talk to people. Going to parades, going to rallies. I would do candidate forums, barbecues, the parades, stuff like that, and just chatting with people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely think we have a problem in general with like people not being very informed in voting. So, do you think that the democratic process serves the people?
Oh no, serves the parties.
Yeah. And I'm concerned about that. There was like I meant to look this up. But if I'm not mistaken, there's a story about Socrates and democracy. Do you know this story?
I do, but I don't know if I can remember the whole story.
Well, effectively, they came out with this idea of this democracy, and he was opposed to it. And I think it was Socrates. Yeah. Well, if not, maybe I'll put a text over the screen or something. Anyway, he was like, "No, this is a bad idea." And eventually, what happened was, instead of the people getting what they wanted, the people basically echoed the influence that was put upon them, and eventually voted to like imprison and execute this guy who told them that democracy was a bad idea and wasn't going to give them what they wanted. And he was very much a man of the people, trying to help the people. But this system turned into just an echo of influence. It's the illusion of getting what you want. And yeah.
Right. I mean, we could talk about the founders of this country because as much as they use the word democracy, they didn't really mean democracy. They meant a republic.
Yeah.
So they wanted to, because you can't fight a war for independence where you're radicalizing your population and arming them with guns, making promises to them, and then after the war saying, "Oh, we were lying to you," because they'll shoot you too. So if you're promising more freedom, more democracy, more engagement, people are going to expect that you give that to them after the war, or they will overthrow you too. So when our founders oftentimes use the word democracy, they would mean representative democracy. We will let you vote for someone else, and then they will go make the decisions for you, which is kind of what we have now.
Yeah.
We have ballot questions where you do get like direct votes, but for
Yeah.
the most part, you're voting for someone else. And then they put up things like the Electoral College or the Senate being appointed by the Senate being appointed by state legislatures to make sure that if you, the voter, screwed up, they would be able to come in and stop your decision, because they would be the ones that would then be able to translate what you actually meant into real action. But I think that's gotten completely screwed up with our two-party system, because it's now not just the parties who are thinking about doing good for the people, it's the parties thinking doing good for their donors. So it's the influence of money that, even if our founders had very good intentions, which sometimes they did, to make sure that people were really being represented, that has been completely screwed up because of money.
Yeah. Yeah. I also, I remember when I was a kid, there was this show, and it was like some sort of math competition or something. And they had these two teams of like 5 kids or something, and they would like work together and come up with an answer and then present the answer to the person. And then they would, win or lose that point or match or whatever. And I remember it would come down to where they would take a vote on something, and there would be one person who was really adamant against the other kids, and then the kids would be like, no, but we all kind of like know it like this. And it would always be that like the one person who was really adamant, well, it seemed to be, I mean, I'm sure probably not always, let's be real, was correct. And then the people that were not sure, that held it to a vote, were almost always wrong. And so it seemed to me that every time they voted, they got it wrong.
Right.
And that stuck with me since I was like, I don't know, like 8 or something like that.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, well, voting doesn't necessarily.
Okay, but where's the actual problem? The problem is the one person that had the answer right needed to learn to communicate better,
Sure.
to get the other kids to go along with him or her.
Yeah.
So that's where it actually fell apart, is you had someone, for whatever reason, understood what the right answer was and wasn't able to convince the other kids to go along with him or her. That person needed to work on their communication skills.
Yeah.
It's not really democracy that was the problem. It was communication between the people in the group. That was the problem.
Yeah, sure.
Which we still have that problem now. People hear things and then they completely misinterpret it and kind of go off down crazy lane.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we still have that problem.
Well, yeah, we have a serious problem with that.
But
Yeah.
oftentimes we do have people who are very smart, who have the right answer, just don't have the communication tools to get people to go along with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the other point is like, well, someone is an expert in something and is informed, and then the consensus is like not superior to that, right? If it doesn't matter what the consensus is, if somebody's gone deeper, gone further, done more experiments, had more experience, that is ultimately going to yield you the best result, assuming that's all accurate and true.
Right.
Which it's this Jeopardy thing is not necessarily real life, but
Right.
in that was the case.
If that person cannot sell the fact that they're right, I don't want that person elected.
Sure.
So I looked up a little bit on the Socrates democracy, and one thing that stuck out in the item that I read was that people have the power to use their emotions to get something through as opposed to logic.
Yeah.
And that's one underlying reason why democracy is probably not the best for a large group of people to be involved in.
Yeah, and I don't know, what the solution is. I mean, obviously, we're a democratic republic as a country, and the idea of the republic is that you put forth this candidate, and then that candidate does whatever. But I'm not even sure, like, that candidate doesn't become an expert. Obviously, you would call it experts, right? And I talk about the idea that maybe someday I want to run for governor. No time soon. I gotta get this
Right.
thing going first, and I need to learn more about other things. But you then. What you don't have the answers. You're a person who listens to the answers and goes further to find the solution. Because all government is, I think people don't know what government is. They
Nope.
seem to have fantastical ideas, but you write policy and you implement solutions by whatever means. And the person who's the politician doesn't necessarily do that. They just put that into effect. But the government's not magical. Some people think like the government like gets it right, or the government has all these things, and the government has this power. And no, they just hire a bunch of people with some money, just the same as anybody else, to do stuff, and after they've made a decision as to what that thing is,
Right.
and that doesn't mean that it's right.
Well, my students learn very quickly. Like we just went through an election cycle, and I always leave time at the end of class, or if it's an online class, we have discussion boards where students will just say, "Can he do that?" So, or can she do that? We're policy or things that they were putting out there. Like Kamala Harris said that she was going to give everybody that was going to buy a house for the first time $25,000. And then my students were like, well, can she do that? They weren't saying emotionally, I like that. Just they were asking me because they get lied to so often, can she actually do that? And I said, not unless Congress appropriates the money. So unless you get a Congress that also goes along with it, no, she can't do that.
Well, for one, I think in detail ended up being a tax credit, and I'm not. Do you pay federal property tax?
No.
It's only state.
It's only state.
So
It's a tax credit against your income tax.
okay, yes.
But if you're
so
poor,
most people are not going to realize any
they're not
part of
going to
that.
get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But my students learned quickly to say, wait, can you even do that? So no matter what candidates were saying, I just said, work your way through logically. Is that part of the government? Because you've got 3 branches of government. You've got federal, you've got state, you've got local. Do they have power over that? And so just the basic civics, Schoolhouse Rock type civics, I was able to teach them just to ask, can she even do that?
Yeah.
And sometimes that they would be able to get to an answer that, no, that's not, she can't do that.
I'm actually running for office of something I've just made up.
Okay.
Called something or other, and I'm promising everyone a $30,000 tax credit. You're gonna have to pay taxes to my organization so we can do this. I'm gonna need you to pay me $65,000, and then I'll give you this $30,000 tax credit. So if you guys want to vote for me, I'll give you part of your money
You had
back.
to get part back. Yeah. I don't
So-
think so.
That's how it works, though.
Yeah.
People forget that.
Having been a first-time home buyer in my life, also they offered that credit, and it was a tax credit. So the stipulation was they would give you the money, and then after you'd had the loan for 10 years, then you would not have to pay it back. So it was a loan. You
was a
couldn't
loan.
just
Right.
get the money and then turn around and sell the house and then actually have any of that money. You'd have to pay it back. So there would probably be some kind of a stipulation in there, even
Right.
so they'd still have to consider that.
Yeah, anytime the government's giving you money, that you paid for it first. I guess that was the point of my joke too, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
Right.
You're going to give you all this money, but we're going to just have to raise your
And
taxes.
I'm on the Sunrise Manor Town Board, so we handle all like the zoning stuff. Like if you want to build a shed, we got to do an approval for that. But we also see all of the development over on the east side. And so we're very aware that there's all kinds of zoning laws that stop you from building apartments or duplexes or a new 7-Eleven. Just even doing a traffic study will stop you from doing it. So when either candidate was saying, we're going to build all these new houses, and I'm like, really? Have you talked to the town boards, and have you found out if the zoning's okay on that? And how long is your throat depth, and how much traffic can you have, and do you have enough parking spaces? Because literally that kills developments. Mm-hmm. If you're going to try and do an apartment building, you have to have a certain number of parking spaces, and you have to be a certain distance away from an intersection for every floor that you put on it. If not, you're not doing it. And so when I listen to federal officials make promises like that, I'm like, unless I see somebody that does local zoning up on the stage with you, you can't make that promise.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess you could change the regulation.
You would have to change all the zoning. You would have to change what's called Title 30, which is like a book this big.
Yeah.
It's
But
complicated.
the reason they have those is because they've had problems before, and they've tried to implement these rules to help alleviate causing that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to
people don't
overwhelm an
understand
existing neighborhood. Or if you've got a neighborhood where everything's 2-story apartments, you don't want to just throw a 3-story apartment in there because the neighbors are not going to like that. It's not aesthetic. It doesn't go along with it. I mean, because over on the east side of town, we have rural preservation properties. Like my neighbors have pigs and goats. You can't have more than 5 roosters. There is
You
actually a zone.
cannot have more than 5. Is that
You
what
can have up to 5 roosters.
Okay.
You can have 20 hens, but no more than 5 roosters. So that's even in the zoning code.
Yeah.
I just saw that somewhere on Nextdoor, and somebody talking about they can't have a rooster wherever they are.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like, you,
Rooster's the big thing because they're noisy
Oh,
and
for
people
sure.
fight them, and
yeah.
Yeah.
hens, no one cares, but roosters, they're a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But see, this is the type of detail when I'm listening to federal candidates or even like people running for governor, when they're making these types of promises, I'm like, oh, honey, come and sit at my town board meeting every other week and listen to the stuff we hear.
Yeah, and they may well know too, right? They're just like, what do people
It's-
want to hear? You know,
Right.
Yeah, that's.
But
a
that's what
factor
I've
as
taught
well.
my students is think about every step of that process. If that person gets elected and they're going to do it, who else has to go along with that decision for it to work?
Yeah,
I think another component is that people need to get more involved in local politics
Yes.
because
Because you might want to have more than 5 roosters.
yes, and you also should be more invested in, say, your neighborhood or your town
Yep.
to know what's going on. It's just more, it's going to have bigger an effect than the federal
courts,
level.
Yeah, that's all local.
yeah, mostly local impacts you more than federal.
Everything related to education. I mean, I know right now we're talking about whether Donald Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education and stuff, but on a daily basis, what's happening with your kids in school is the local school board.
Exactly.
What does the federal Department of Education do?
They mostly manage what's called Title I funds. And so if you have a child that has special needs, they get funding through the federal government. There are children who are in poverty get special funding from the federal government. So it's usually children who need special help that the states don't fund. That comes through the Department of Education.
What about the
Interesting.
free lunch? Where is that a state or a federal
That's
thing?
federal.
That's federal.
But there's usually matching funds that come from the states. And so that's why some states have gone to completely free lunch, is because the states have been willing to match what the federal government puts in to cover all their kids.
Interesting. They don't regulate curriculum in any way?
From the federal level?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I thought they had some influence on curriculum. I didn't know. I haven't looked into it, but that was my speculative understanding.
Nope.
Okay.
It's all, now we have a state board of education, and then every county has a board of education.
Okay.
It's your state board of education that handles curriculum.
Okay.
That would make sense because all of the states have rankings on how well they're doing. And technically, if everyone was federally regulated, we would all be about the same. But I think some school
Not
districts
necessarily.
are not doing well
There's
over
still
others.
influences outside of the school that would affect that, but I get what you mean. Right.
I mean, there's certain standards related to science, related to math, related to social studies that every school is going to meet. And it's not because the federal government set those standards, it's because the universities set those standards. So what the universities and colleges are doing is they're telling K-12, when you're sending the kiddos to us, in order for them to be college ready, this is what we need them to know.
Interesting.
And so it's usually coming through the universities.
Yeah, I have major problems with how academia is working.
Oh, me too.
I think like the types of things that people are learning, the inability to turn that into real world meaningful things, even when there is a connection there.
That's why I teach at a community college.
Yeah, I go and I'm like I like design or build something, and I'm like talking about some whatever, and people are like, "Whoa, how'd you learn all that?" I'm like, "You were in algebra too, right? Like, hello, it was algebra. We all
Right.
took out. What do you mean? How did I learn that? Like, you just didn't realize
At
that
the
class goes
universities,
to
they
like
don't do an application. They
Yeah.
teach you a bunch of stuff and don't tell you how to apply it.
it's worthless.
Yeah.
Then it's
Right.
worthless.
That's why I like the community college, because we pair the two together. So we've got a workforce side of the house and an academic side of the house. And then what faculty have done is kind of woven them together so that we make sure that as their students are taking their workforce classes, they're taking the matching academic class, like you just said, so that they see how this applies to this. So
Yeah.
I like that much better.
Yeah. I'm not anti-biology. I think biology is great. And I've got a few biologist friends. But learning about the cell, okay, that is not something I can apply to the real world as
But
much
the
as I've
process
tried.
of learning about the cell is more important. Like, for instance, I teach history. It's not that I expect you to remember who's buried in Grant's tomb or any of those details that's on your phone. You can look it up. But I want you to learn to think like a historian. And so what we do when we do logic, if I say what caused the Civil War, I'm going to expect that you tell me what the proximate causes were and what the ultimate causes were, and then you need to string them together for me. And so I want you to show me logically, you can tell me when something starts and then how it evolves until we get something like the Civil War or somebody gets elected or something happens, so that when you are thinking about other things in your work life, you can understand how that logic works and apply it.
I understand that concept. I'm not sure that's what academia is actually doing, though. Right?
I don't know that they are really. See, again, that's why I don't want to be at a university. When I'm teaching my students, I've got nursing students and I've got computer engineers and I've got paramedics. And so I'm usually crafting my lesson plans knowing the types of things they're going to be doing on a daily basis so that they're communicating in that way, they're thinking in that way, they're writing in that way.
So you just need to help with the state curricula then.
We're trying.
We realize, and
CCSD
we hear
drives us
you.
crazy.
Yeah,
Because when they send them to us, we're like, you're not college ready at all.
Well, college ready. I mean, I just want the learning to be real world, and we're we're from back
so
east.
college
and-
ready, like turn your assignment in on time.
Yeah,
They
But
can't even
even-
do that.
yeah, but I'm even concerned that the assignments are like. I think that it needs to. I think one part of the problem that we have is that the students aren't invested in the assignments because they do not understand how they apply to the real world. We have a teenager, and every time we go to teach her something, her response is, "Why do I
Why?
need to know this?"
Yep.
And we explain it to her, but she'll debate that. And
I think
we
it's
don't.
worse. I think she says, I don't need to know this.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
That's
Yep.
kind of a teenager thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's wrong because there's no way we're like we don't teach her arbitrary things for the kicks and giggles. Or if we do, we tell her that we're like, there's this thing you can learn about. It's kind of fun, but it's not necessarily But we teach her like really practical stuff, and then she like is not invested in it because she doesn't know how it applies to the real world, and that's partly because she has no idea how the real world works,
Right.
and that's partly because she's in school all day and disconnected from the real world, and so are some of the teachers. But these kids need to know what they're learning and how it applies to the real world.
Yep.
And a good portion of it does apply to the real world, and they have no clue.
But they don't. So one thing, I'm actually chairing an ad hoc committee at CSN for what we call first year experience because we need to completely change it. The way we traditionally taught first year experience was, hi, you're new to college. Do you know where the counseling office is? Do you know where the library is? Can you send an email? That type of stuff, which is useful if you've never been to college. But what we're asking the administration to do is pair up the first year experience with 2 free workforce certifications in the career field that the student maybe thinks they want to go into. And then we're talking to employers and saying, if we can get them some certifications right off the bat, would you employ them entry level now so that they can be making more money and can pay rent? That's part of it. But we want our students to do what you just said. You go out into the real world, see how the real world works, and then I don't have to try to keep explaining to you how the real world works. No, but there's faculty who agree with you. We're like, we need them to be in the work world now so that while they're doing their job, they're also then taking our classes so that they can see, oh, this is why I would use this. This is where this is useful. But we're hoping it will also help them think about which classes they want to take more thoughtfully because they know, oh, at work, I probably need some computer help, so I should probably take that Microsoft Word class, or I'm having some difficulties because I need to use an Excel spreadsheet, or I don't communicate well enough because people don't seem to understand me, so that they can see that connection between this is what I'm doing, this is what the class will teach me. That's the direction we want to go. But now we're going to have to completely redo how financial aid works, but we're up for the fight.
Yeah. So I think that there's and the problems I think go deeper than that. A lot of kids, like it used to be, you were in a village and you were a kid, and you would literally start helping out. Like as soon as you could carry stuff, you just carry
Yep.
whatever you could. You just do whatever you
were
could.
your parents' own
You
little
would-
labor force.
Yeah, you would be involved. And I heard somebody say, and it sounded true to me, that kids want to work. They want to do things. Like they want to help. and work is relative, right? I mean, when people hear kids working, their brain goes to ridiculous things. But some kid who carries the last box, that's the light box. Some kid who does whatever. Some kid who puts a thing together because he sees you put it together. Like they want, they want to be involved and they should be involved. But this is not happening. And I realize this is happening at home before school.
Yep.
And kids have this idea that like work and tasks are bad, and when you talk to kids like about doing a task, like it's like pure dread for them. But doing tasks is good. It's cathartic. It's learning. It's interacting. It's social. It's so many things, and they're not doing that.
They don't have time to be sad. They don't have time to think about
Nope.
whatever else is going on.
Yeah.
They sometimes they think about, well, I should be getting paid for this. You've done nothing that is skilled labor either. So how about you just continue to stay involved?
Yeah. Kids need to not learn that they get paid for jobs till they're 18, maybe something like that. But I mean, without exploiting them, right? But they get too fixated that they deserve something when they haven't learned. You need to learn first.
It's an apprenticeship.
Yeah. So we need more of that. I generally think that comes from kids being more involved with adults, and I think school is alienating them from adults. They go, they're there. It's nothing but kids their own age. They
They're
start
locked
group
down.
thinking. I think that's stunting maturity, and I don't know what the solution is because
It's brain development.
yeah.
And we especially have seen this in post-pandemic, that students are coming to us, and it's not just that no one talked to you about algebra or no one told you how to construct a sentence. It's literally us asking them to work in a group or asking them to communicate something clearly where you're interacting with other people. And they look at you with this look that my brain doesn't even understand what you're asking of me. And it's like you can tell they have not read into this at all. And so then we have to back up and say, oh, okay, so the brain development that was supposed to be there before you came to us is not there for whatever reason. We need to start building in group activities, communicating with people, sending them an email that doesn't start out with the word hey, that type of stuff. Because it didn't happen. And so the brain is like, I don't even know what you're asking me.
Yeah.
But it's what you're saying. They haven't even been around other people to say, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I think sometimes parents, they'll try to insert this phrase where they say, well, they have the phone and they know so much about that. They're very computer savvy.
Oh my gosh,
And
no.
I am so tired of
no.
that
Yeah,
because
they're not.
it does not equate to computer
Computer skills are
skills,
declining for sure.
Yeah.
communication skills, any kind of technical skills generally. And that is something that really needs to be squashed.
Yep.
Yeah. The more that the phones have made it easier for people to interact with technology, the less like capable people have become at interacting and using and leveraging technology.
Yep. Because I teach a lot of online classes, and I get students where the instructions will say, attach your file. And then I get an email. I don't know what attach your file means. But it's not even that. I'm like, well, then figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, click on things until you figure it out. They won't even do that. They just sit there like dead in the water.
Yeah. I'm lucky that I was born very different. I've always been different. I think different. But that's how I learned like most of the computer stuff is I wanted to know probably somebody showed me the first thing. And
No, you're like me. My students laugh at me. They're like, you just click on things until it works. I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that too. But somebody's like, oh, there's this thing over here in this menu. And I was like, there is. What's in the other menus then? Like,
Right.
And so I go through and I look at them and I look at it and I have profound understandings of like how my computer and operating system work that I know that I can do things that just about nobody can do or nobody can do that they haven't learned from somebody else, just because I dug through it. I
Right.
dug through it. There's still like old stuff in modern computers that you can't even access through the new interfaces that's still built in there that I've seen, and I've been sort of looking at it for a while. Like there's still like this dial-up thing in there. and people don't even know that stuff's in there.
Right.
But some of it's useful.
And you're also interested in solving your problem quickly and moving on. And some kids don't even
They just quit.
They just think that it's going to be too hard, and also somebody's helped them along the way, so somebody else needs to help them figure it out and show them all of the steps.
Yep, they don't know
Yeah.
how to struggle to get to the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they're not willing to struggle.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Painful and embarrassing. Ew.
And you so much want to go, here, so let me show you, but I have to fold my arms and go, nope, figure it out.
Yeah. So years ago, I hired somebody. Well, HR had all these parameters that they put on me, and I have feelings about HR too. But basically, so I had to hire a specific person, and they had this masters of whatever, and they came to work for me, and they were my assistant. I was IT director, and this person they required every little detail, like hand guided, like they wanted a syllabus. And I was like, well, I don't have time to write you a syllabus on like how to do everything. Like you have to like take some autonomy with these tasks and you have to get them done. I spent more time managing them than they could ever possibly give back to me. We ended up just canning the whole thing. But it was like, why couldn't this person like take the initiative? And then they would be like, one time I went over and they were just sitting at the desk and I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I did this task and this task, and you didn't give me any more tasks, so I'm just here. And it's like, what the hell? There's a lot to do. Like, come get me. This person was making like $70,000 a year with this master's degree,
Right.
and was all kinds of worthless. Like, I don't know, and had just ridiculous ideas. So one thing was, there was one particular task that they happened to know how to do, and I didn't know how to do yet, right? Because I just hadn't gotten around to it. And so they were going to connect to this switch and send it this firmware update, and they knew how to do this TFTP thing. And I just never had done that at that particular point because most of them had this web interface that I could do it through. And so they were like really like on about that. And they made a comment, and I don't know that I'm not a very emotional person, so I didn't care, but and so I didn't respond to the comment, but I've been thinking about this comment for a long time. And he basically was thinking that he should have my job because he knew how to do one thing that I didn't know how to do. And it's like, well, first of all, you obviously don't know what the job is because it's way more than that. And like, that's like the least of it. And also it would take me 5 minutes to go and learn how to do that task. You think that because you know how to do one task that I could probably learn in 5 minutes, that you therefore know more than me because you knew one thing that I didn't know, therefore I know nothing. What kind of thinking is that you think that was the craziest thing I'd ever encountered? And I'm like, did you consider like absolutely everything else where you have no clue what to do and I know what to do? Like,
well,
why would you
have to
think
give
about
them
that?
context too. You were probably way younger than them as well,
Oh yeah, that's true.
so that matters.
Oh,
What was
yeah,
the age difference?
I don't know. So when I was director of IT, I was 21, 22. And yeah, there was a company of, well, yeah, I think I was the youngest person
He
at the
forgot
company.
about that.
Yeah.
And I was fifth from the top. And I think the person we hired was like probably like 27, 28. But people didn't know I was 22. So somebody said that I was 29, and then I never denied it, and I just kind of let it run because it didn't seem to benefit me to explain to people, because people were already freaking out that I was only 29, and I was like fifth from the top, and I had people under me that were double my age and stuff. And so so people would freak out about how young I was. So I didn't ever bother to actually correct them. That seemed like a really bad idea. And I mean, I had deficits as a young person. There was a lot of dumb things that I did, but as far as writing good policy, coming up with good solutions for the business, valuing the business's the impact on the business, I don't know why people don't understand that either. They go and they get a job, and then they don't understand that they're supposed to move the business forward. That's how you get forward, right? That you make you fuel the machine that produces. And it produces for you too. If you don't fuel it, some people are like, why should I help this company get ahead? I don't know. Do you want them to pay you? Like, hello, where do you think it comes from? Yeah,
You can't just take. You have to make something to add to the big company.
Right.
yeah.
But see, this is where you and I are similar because when I do things politically, I do the logic, I work my way through it, I know what's possible, I know what the legalities are, I know who the people are, I have it all figured out, and I know that that outcome is achievable. And so if you keep blocking me from that outcome, I'm just going to keep coming back at you in other ways. And so it makes them nervous because they'll stop me one way and then they're like, now what is she going to do? I'm like, oh, I'll sue you now because that's what I'm going to do with open primaries is we're going to sue them.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, we're going to sue you. Okay.
Going back to that point, the open primaries was only for voting locally as well. And I think people need to be aware of that. And you've talked about that.
Yeah.
But it's only for local elections that
Right
we
now,
were voting on.
Yeah, right now, we have open primaries in the down ballot local races. What ballot question 3 wanted to do is make the top of the ticket look like bottom of the ticket, so all of them would be open primary. With open primaries, there was a lot of people who said they didn't like ballot question 3 because they thought it should be 2 questions. Open primaries and ranked choice voting separated out.
Yes.
I don't agree.
They have to be together because if you're going to do open primary top 5, if you don't want to crash the general election and have ticket splitting or a spoiler effect, you have to do ranked choice voting. So if you want to do just open primaries without ranked choice voting in the general, you can only do top 2. Because if not, once you have, let's say you have 5 people and you've got 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans, the Democrats are going to split their vote and elect one of the Republicans, even though there's probably more Democrats who voted. But if you split your vote 3 ways, it dilutes out your power, and then you're going to end up electing one of the Republicans with probably 25% of the vote. So if you want to have the diversity, and you can define diversity in lots of different ways, in the general, you have to do ranked choice voting so you don't end up voting for somebody that most of the people didn't want.
Yeah. I also know that there's a strategy to spoil the opposing primary. If you can vote in there, people will go over there to the other party and vote for a candidate they think that will fail.
That's what we have right now. Because with same-day voter registration, I can literally walk in and say I want to be a Democrat or Republican and vote on the other side. That's what we have right now. If you put everybody on one ballot and you only get one vote, if you're voting for who you think the weaker opponent is, you've just thrown away your vote for your stronger candidate. So that helps to get rid of this kind of screwing around in the other side's primary by putting everybody on one ballot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely don't think people should be messing around in other people's primaries.
Nope, but you can do that right now.
Interesting. Okay, noted. I did not know that. Okay. Yeah, so I definitely think that you need them both to make it work. Mm-hmm. I thought that from go. I didn't realize we had this problem already, and then I think we could see people like candidates like we've never seen before,
right? With
this, and like I said, I could go and I could put my name in there, and I already know what I would do. I would produce all these videos going through, hey, I learned about these issues. Here's my take on them.
Yep.
And then when I get elected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to make videos showing the process, giving it transparency. I think we need a lot of transparency in government that doesn't exist. There should not. We have more government agencies than we have years that we've been a country at the federal level, which is ridiculous. The bills have so many things buried in them, and the language is so...
It's written by lawyers for lawyers.
Yeah, because, so here's something that people don't understand. People will say entities, for example, which was one of the questions on the thing. I was immediately leery of this. I don't know what it means exactly, but entities has a specific legal meaning. Entities is defined as this, that, and whatever. You think that it's you, the layperson, think that it's this open-ended thing, and you're like, well, this thing would be an entity. Well, and then you go through the thing, and then it's not. There's a lot of abuse of language to carve and drive government policy to steer it in the way they want, and it's written in a way that it appears to be one way. But the legal interpretation of that is another way.
Yep.
And then there's a reason and precedent for the legal interpretation. But generally, we just need way more transparency.
Plain language.
Yeah, we need plain language, and we also need uh, some sort of education per anytime there's a policy written, somebody should go through it and explain what each one of those sections and words means
Yep.
and how it will be actuated upon. There's a cool website that they have. I guess I should just shout out the name of the website. I was a debate as to whether or not I should like plug people. I don't otherwise know that this website's good, but one of the features that they have, it's called Geniusly or something like that. And it's for music lyrics. And what you do is you go and you bring up like some song, and you click through the verse and it will tell you about that verse, the cultural meaning, the interpretation, the analogy, the whatever it is, right? Because there's a lot of people that don't understand music, for example, right? There's the one song by something Chapman, it's The Cat in the Cradle. So there's this song, great song. Well, people don't understand it because they don't listen to it closely enough or they don't follow through the verses. And they think that it's just this loving thing about his father and this son. But it's actually a song about how the father messed up as a father. And he goes through that in the song. And unless you pay close attention, you don't get that. And then when you go to like that and you look at the lyrics on this website, it actually tells you a little bit more about how the songwriter, who may be the singer or whatever.
Jim Croce.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I have no idea who it was. I
Yep.
forgot. But his stories and things that he's talked about in public where he's elaborated more detail on his situation, and then you can see how that makes sense to that verse, and you basically can turn this song by looking into this into like a book about this story,
Right.
that's like highly informative and very real. And the same concept needs to exist for government bills, where you can go through these things, people are producing information on it, and you have this transparency and this full understanding as to what has taken place. And that just doesn't exist. Most people don't even know when any kind of policy is written. They don't know where it's put. They don't know what it means if they can pull it up. And they don't know how it's being used even after you understand what it says.
Right.
And that's ridiculous. That's so ridiculous.
So one of the things I do in January of legislative years, and that's going to be 2025, is I do trainings on how to use the legislative website. If you go to the legislature's website, up at the top it says NELIS, and that is the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System. If you click on that, it's actually a really nifty program. The page you land on when you click on NELIS, on the one side, it will tell you what's happening each day in the legislature, which committees are meeting, what time. You can live stream them, where you can get the agenda. And then on the other side is a calendar. So for the 120 days, when the deadlines are and what's happening. But then on that website, you can go to committee pages or you can go to bill pages and actually pull up PDF versions of every single bill. And one of the nice things that the Legislative Counsel Bureau, is the attorneys that work for the legislature's done, is when you open up the bill, they actually use strikeouts and colors and different things as you're going through, where they annotate it, where they it's not as detailed as what you're saying, but it does help you to kind of understand why words being replaced, what's being put in here, what it's going to mean if it actually gets passed. But unless you know how to go in and find it, it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
And so that's why I always do trainings, and I do them on Zoom and usually record them and put them onto YouTube and kind of send them out. Because it's like, it's there, but nobody's telling people how to find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of it is the lawyers doing what they call conforming language. So if you've ever worked with a legislator to write a bill, and I've done this a couple of times, you sit there with the attorney, and what they will do is they'll say, what do you want to do? What's the outcome that you want to achieve? And then what they'll do is they'll bring up current law that relates to what you want to do, and then they'll start walking you through where the current law would need to change in order for your thing to happen. And so oftentimes, it's not just writing a bill that you stick into law somewhere. It's opening up a current law and like editing it. And so what they'll say is, well, this is the language they were using when we wrote this originally, so I'm going to have to write conforming language that fits the syntax. And so they'll take your plain language word and then turn it into the legalese that's already in the law. And so oftentimes that's where it gets really confusing, because what you were saying made perfect sense, and now all of a sudden it's become legalese.
I imagine they have to do that legally.
It's
because
required.
of the legal system. It has to be backed by that.
Yeah, I understand that there's a reason to put it into
But
specific
government
language.
should have someone that then tells you what the plain language
Puts it in
was.
the layman's terms.
There should
Yeah.
be some sort of letter of intent associated with every one of these things that breaks down what the objective is, and then maybe some sort of
Like a one-pager.
well, just something that tells you we wrote this and it's intended to do this, and then you can at some point evaluate whether or not it's doing that, because even the best informed, best intending politician or governing person or body is going to make mistakes, right?
Right.
There's a lot of things that had very good intentions and were written in a way that they had thought about it, and then still, no matter what, in the end, the execution of that becomes exploited.
Right. The whole implementation is a huge problem. For what I usually tell most people, if you're really interested in a bill that's going through the session, either watch or attend the live committee hearing, because oftentimes what will happen to begin is the person who's sponsoring the bill does an explanation. So a lot of times they'll get that intent. Here's what I'm trying to do. But if you're working when that hearing is going on, you're not going to be able to be there in person to maybe ask a question. But our legislature records all of the hearings and then puts them onto the committee page. So what I end up doing is I am up until like 2 a.m. going through the hearings, just trying to listen to what you just said. What are they trying to do here? Because I can read it and I'm not exactly sure what this is achieving. But then when you hear the person say it, you realize, oh, okay, now I get it. But let's say it passes and now it's out there in the ether getting implemented and the implementation gets screwed up. Oftentimes what we're having to do is walk backwards and figure out where the screw up happened. Was it the intent? Was it the conforming language? Or did the person or agency doing the implementation not get funded? Or the person just didn't understand? But see, that's what I try to teach my students is sometimes the thing that happens right before, that's a proximate cause. But really, problem started out with you thought you were doing something and it didn't get translated correctly into the bill. So we need to amend it.
Yeah.
Even before any of this as well, we've talked about this before, but how the people that are voting and how they've expanded those that are able to vote is now becoming a problem in our democracy.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, yeah.
Because the underinformed and the uninformed and those that don't have this level of detail or the level of understanding of what is going on are making choices based on news, based on a lot of propaganda in some cases, and also voting because of their emotion. They don't fully understand that what's going on enough to be like, well, generally this is probably better for me, as opposed to, well, no, somebody said that it's going to do a bad thing, and now I'm not going to vote with that.
Right.
Yeah, the people who say that everyone should vote or that it's your civic duty to vote have the most campaign funds and have the most media buys. And, they're telling you everyone should vote, especially when I control all of the influence and make it look like you should be voting for me, which is not, there's no truth to everyone should vote.
And that's when I kept saying to people with open primaries and ranked choice voting is you just teach people. And it's like, oh my gosh, we don't want you teaching people stuff. And it's like, the political parties would like you to stay exactly the way you just said. We'll push your buttons and you'll react emotionally and then you're going to vote. And I say, stop doing that. That get people registered to vote, and then we need public civics education. If we can spend $1 billion on one presidential campaign, I think we could spare a few bucks doing public civics education.
Yeah. Well, I generally wonder if we should,
Right, because you want to do videos, right?
Yeah.
to explain things to people, right?
Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it. Another thing is like there's always repercussions to anything you think about. And I'm like, well, there's repercussions to having everyone vote. But there's also repercussions to putting any kind of parameter on it. Any parameter you put on who can vote is also going to be exploited, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, and however you want to define that exploitation and whatever, if you put guardrails on it, somebody's going to seek to steer those guardrails one way or the other. And I just don't know how, other than telling people, unless you're like really informed, don't vote. That's that's the only thing you can think of telling people, which is
Right.
the opposite of what people are hearing.
Right. But what I tell my students is ask the question, can she do that?
Yeah.
Can he do that? So listen to what they're saying to you and then think about, okay, she says she's going to do this or that's bad. Well, what does that mean? What's behind that? For it to be bad, what does that mean? Because I think if you can even just do the basic civics, you can't actually do that because you're going to be in the executive branch, and that's actually something that the legislative branch does. Or you have to have Congress do an appropriation before that can even happen. So I need to be thinking about who I'm voting for Congress as well, if I want that thing to happen. And so to me, it's just the mechanics of government sometimes can help people slow down when, like you said, they're having that emotional response to think, is that even true? Can you actually even do that?
Well, they're also appealing. Listen to them when they're talking to you. The politician that wants you to vote for them. Is this really something that is a baseline? Is it going to be a good rule? Because 20 years down the road, do you want everybody to get $25,000 just the same as you might be eligible for that now?
Right.
Your emotion will be different now than it will be in 20 years. And you have to also think about that.
Right. Or the person sitting next to you already bought a house last year and they're going to be out and they're not going to get the $25,000. How do you think he's feeling about that right now?
Yeah, they
Because
don't.
he's
Not
going
only
to feel
do they not
cheated.
get it, they have to pay for it.
Right. You're paying for somebody else to get it.
Yeah. Where's the money
And-
coming from?
Right. So I always say when you're being offered something, realize somebody else is not getting offered that thing and they're going to be mad about it.
Yeah, I think about the student debt thing, right? Like, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna like, generally people who go to college are more privileged than those who don't, and then we're going to take from those that maybe didn't even have such opportunities to cover this, and that was like the worst one. That one, and then another thing is like just like that too, where I think that's a bad idea. I think here we are stirred up talking about this one thing when there's the entire rest of the federal budget and the entire rest of this purview, and here we are like a bunch of fools stuck on this one point when that's so minuscule to everything else that's going on.
Watch what I'm doing here. Pay no attention over here.
Yeah.
And why is it not the institutions that have loaned the money that have to do the work to figure out how to help the students?
The government loans the money.
But why? There's got to be some other way to do
The
that.
colleges
So-
that sold them the service, you mean?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
here's the bigger problem, because this is, again, like a deep insider view of this. For about 10 years, maybe 15 years, there was this idea that somehow that everybody should go to an Ivy League college, that if you weren't being directed to an Ivy League university, somehow that was being racist to you or sexist to you, and that anybody could go there and be just fine. And for a while, they were actually saying if you told somebody to go to a community college, that was racist. And those of us who were at the community college said, stop saying that because it's not. And so a lot of kids that would have normally gone to the community college, which is very affordable, and got their associate's degree, which is your core classes, saved a bunch of money, and then gone on to a university, were tracked right over to the most expensive Ivy League college. And then we all got told, no, they're going to have wraparound services. They'll be fine. They were not fine. They failed. They took out hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans and failed because they were not ready to go to an Ivy League college. But it was the system that told them to go and the system that loaned them the money. So the system should be on the hook for that money.
Yeah. There's also I don't think people really understand Ivy League schools and the real benefit. It is there's no better curriculum there.
It's the same.
You're networking.
It's the network.
And unless you are in a position to network, because not everybody is, you can go there and literally not benefit from that aspect of it.
No, nothing.
Yeah, you're getting nothing. You're just paying through the nose for
nothing.
For the opportunity you could barely grasp at. So
I mean,
yeah.
I have in the summertime, I have students that are at Ivy League schools who take my online classes because they're like, I'm not dumb. Why should I pay for the same class where I'm at when I can just take it with you?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're figuring things out. It's the same curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Why pay $15,000 for it when I can pay $2,000?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, that's the problem. Is the system screwed up? And so they're trying to not hold the students liable for it, but not telling you why they're actually doing it. Because then they would have to admit they made a mistake.
Yeah. Well, they get a lot of money, probably. Well, I don't know that those people
the Ivy
telling
League's
you.
got that money.
Yeah, don't they kick the money back? Well, yeah, I don't know if they do kick the money. Well, somebody benefited.
The Ivy League should pay it off.
Yeah.
Well, the endowments are the way that politicians have been talking about how they could start retracting some of those funds from the endowments of these colleges, because I don't fully understand them, but they just have this reserve of money in some cases in these institutions. And so for what? Like, what are they even spending that on if they're also getting
Why is the government offering endowments? Right, that's your question.
Right.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
did they get a savings in addition to also charging these students?
Right.
Yeah.
They've got millions of dollars in endowments.
Yes.
And then they charge super high tuition.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're getting doubly paid. Sounds a little bit like that.
Oftentimes, wealthy individuals will put money in endowments to save it away someplace where it's protected from taxation. And so, if I give you $100 million and you invest it, the $100 million doesn't get taxed, and then you can use the investment money and get taxed on that, which is a much lower amount of money to be taxed on. It's a bunch of kind of hocus pocus, moving money around.
Yeah. I know that to get, I guess, to go back to government, I know that there's so I'm a disabled veteran, so I get preferred status on government contracting. And I went to get into this whole thing, and I learned a lot about a lot of crazy stuff. And they put all these requirements on these contracts that sound nice, that sounds like it serves the underdog. Oh, well, you have to have this and that status, and you have to have this and that, and you have to have so on. And a lot of that is exploitation to earmark things for specific people. They put the obscure requirements on there to give that contract to a specific person or company or whatever it is that they already know about. And so they either get whatever favorable thing, or they get kickback, or they get whatever. And on the face of it, I hear people, oh, well, these programs are so good, they're helping people. And then I go in to be this thing, having this status, realizing that it's very difficult to get these contracts because they're written with the intended person to serve them.
Yep.
And these laws that people have this perception are doing the polar opposite of, what they're there for.
It's the same with grants.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Where it looks like it's open to anybody. And then when there's so much paperwork and so much red tape associated with it, it can only be a company that has 3 lawyers on staff that can actually fill out the paperwork. Or, like you said, they will put something in there specifically that they know only one company or only one nonprofit's going to be able to qualify.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff is crazy. And so when I hear people are like, oh, well, they need more set aside for whatever, or more thing for, indigenous people or whatever people, I'm like, you have no idea how fast that's going to be exploited.
Yep.
Because and then the person you think that's going to benefit is not going to benefit.
Nope.
Like, no way.
I remember we were trying to fill out that SAM
Yeah.
.gov site, and even trying to get through the application to be on the list, there were so many ridiculous questions that they had on there.
Yeah.
None of them came to me, but we got stuck. And I remember I was talking to you about it, and you were like, forget it, we're not doing this. I mean, we had one hoop, we jumped through one hoop to do something, but they required so many small, like very specific things on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we ended up talking to one person. I'm not going to name names on this, but yeah, he spilled the beans. He's like, yeah, we use this requirements to steer these things, and he just basically said it. And he's like, yeah, and this and that. So he's like, so if you really want to do this, and he was going to potentially bring me into the fold, but he's like, yeah, you have to play this game. And I was like, wow, here I am thinking I've got this leg up. Why wouldn't I use it? Why wouldn't I use this benefit that I have? And I'm learning
It's not real.
no.
Right.
I'm not going to get a single meaningful contract, out of this deal.
But I tell my students that too. I said, what you think is real is not. There's this whole reality out there that is not true. And so you always have to ask yourself, is this real? Is this true?
Yeah.
And so what I'll tell them is you might look at it and it might look one way to you. Ask him what it is. And because he's in a different space than you are, he'll tell you what it is because he sees it, you don't.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of crazy government corruption.
It's called lying.
Well, it's worse than that.
Yep.
I mean, there's, I meant to talk about this on something else, but I'll tell you, there are neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., entire neighborhoods where the average house cost is $25 million.
Yep.
How can that be possible? Well, I know damn well how it's possible. I've been to those houses. I've been to parties, and I've known people, and I'm one of the fortunate few. But yeah, those people are that you sure people get elected, right? And you think about like all these bureaucrats in the deep state, and they're in the government, and they're like, that's the deep state. I'm like, well, maybe, but there's a hand playing those people like they're marionettes, that has all these money that trades these favors. Yeah, I've interacted with some of these people. They don't have a job. They don't exactly have a company, and they literally party and trade favors, and that's all they do. They party and trade favors, and they live in $25 million houses by just chatting people up at the party. I'll trade you this if you trade me that, and we'll do this and we'll do that. Deciding government entities. So yeah, that's a problem, and then how do you fix that? Well, I think one solution this current administration has talked about doing is moving some of those agencies outside of DC. I think that will really mess up a lot of that.
You mean the next administration?
Yeah.
The incoming.
The incoming administration.
Yeah.
I think that'll mess that up a lot. I think that will do something to that. But then how long will that last too? I don't know, because
The people who are gaming the system evolve and they figure out how to game it again. But see, that's what when I heard the process of the open primary top 5 with ranked choice voting in the general election, the top 5 really caught my eye, because if you're pulling forward a lot of new people who are not embedded in the system, and you can get some of them elected over the incumbents, because our incumbents get reelected 98% of the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And they get embedded in the system you're talking about, and they get more money, which means they're more likely they're going to keep getting reelected. If you can disrupt that system so that you're pumping through newer people all the time, it starts to disrupt that, because you're going to get people who are going to be like you and say, I'm not playing this game. I'm going to go out and tell people about this game.
Yeah. Why even limit to 5?
Because because it's new. And so 5 psychologically people can usually handle, because people do surveys all the time out on the websites and the internet, that if you go 5 or under, people usually will take the survey, will probably vote. Once it's over 5, it drops off.
That's too much information.
Who decides the 5?
So the 5 are just the top 5 vote getters in the primary.
I think you have to throw your bid.
So how many people in
to
the
be
primary
on the
then?
ballot?
As many
as want to put their hat in. And see, right now, the political parties in the closed primaries limit Like on my ballot this time, I only had one person for my assembly race. There was one person for my congressional race. There was no competition at all because the parties had already decided who they wanted and drove everybody else out.
Yeah.
With an open primary, you just put your name on the ballot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So having more people participate in the primary, moving 5 forward to the general election, using ranked choice voting so it's more likely people are going to have some type of consensus, disrupts the party's ability to just keep sending the incumbents back over and over again.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons they hated ballot question 3.
Yeah. It passed the prior year. I'm really sad that we didn't get it. We're specifically talking about Nevada. I know damn well this podcast is gonna get watched.
It
Probably
lost,
in Nevada
it lost in
last.
all the western states that it was in. And that was because of the consultant. See, that's another scam is the consulting business. That the big funders, when they decide they want to put a bunch of money behind a ballot question, oftentimes they will hire a consultant. Sometimes they will hire local. In our case, they hired somebody that lives in Long Island, New York. And we kept trying, when we ran it the first time, because it's a constitutional amendment, it had to pass twice. When it ran the first time, they went with a local consultant, and he understood our politics and the way Nevada's kind of crazy and how we do things. And we talked to a lot of people, and it passed 53%. To get it through the second time, they're like, oh, no, we need to bring in the big guns, so we're going to bring this consultant in from New York. And we said no, because we're not New York. We are Nevada. And we especially don't want somebody saying Nevada, which he did a couple of times.
I do that.
And so he...
You can correct it now.
Yes, we're like, oh, I can't say that. But we said with something like this, it's a big change. It just has to be personal conversations like we're having right now at this minute, where we ask questions and how would that work, and maybe we do a demonstration. And they said, no, we're just going to do ads, and we're only going to focus on the open primary because that's what's polling better. And we kept telling them it's going to blow up in your face. You have to talk to people. We got 47%, so it wasn't a huge loss, but they spent $40 million to lose. And we just kept saying, you have to talk to people.
Who stands to gain? Who's funding this, and who stands to gain from this open primary, other than obviously the people?
So the people who are providing the funding are a lot of people who are entrepreneurs. So they are people in business, not, the big super giant corporations, but also not, independent contractor or mom and pop, but people who are Chamber of Commerce types that would like to have policy continuity and not deal with all the drama that you see on both ends of the political parties where they end up just wasting time arguing about stupid things, and just deal with
Those who
having
have skin in the game in the state.
Yeah. We that the idea of having skin in the game is not something you understand till you're older.
Oh yeah.
Heard that from several people, and my uncle for one. And I was like, what do you mean? Of course I have skin in the game. And then no, I didn't. And then you buy a house, you do this, you start building things, and then somebody's just trying to vote it all away from you, and
yeah. Then you're
this
like, oh,
must be
no.
what they're
You're
talking
like,
about.
right.
Where's 40% of my money? I don't see that money, and things.
Yeah.
Right, things. I'm going more in debt.
So if you think about open primary with ranked choice voting, the foundation is competition. We need more competition. We need more people to be able to compete on a level playing field, which I agree with. And it's very entrepreneurial. You want to get top 5? Get out there and hustle. Get out there and talk to people. Earn it. Not have the party give it to you. Earn it. And then again, if you're in the general election with 5 people, you better hustle up second choice votes or you're not going to make it through. So from their perspective, that's just entrepreneurial. That's kind of business sense. But to me, that's what democracy should be. If I'm going to vote for you, I want to see you out there hustling, talking to people, making your videos, so I can ask you questions. If I never see you, why are you winning? But that's what the parties want. They just want to be able to send you a couple mailers. Maybe they do a debate or 2, and then they win. So who's supporting something like open primaries with ranked choice voting as far as funding?
Oh, you were talking about the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a lot of business people. Like United America is probably one of the biggest funders. And most of the people who are involved with United America, either running the nonprofit or giving money to them, are people who are entrepreneurs who've come up like you did, kind of through the ranks, having a couple businesses, who really want our policy making function of government to be stable, not to have it swinging wildly back and forth between the two political parties. And they actually think instead of trying to over control things, is what the parties do, to go the other direction and open the political process up to real competition.
Yeah.
Because they feel that if you force people to actually compete and then have voters go with the person that did the best performance competing, that person's going to be more stable and moderate than somebody that's just out kind of screaming crazy things.
Yeah. What is the Chamber of Commerce? I don't actually know what that is.
It's a policy advocating body for people who are in business.
It's a group of businesses that are local, and they help to just build a good community for other businesses to be in. And
then they do a lot of
network.
advocacy. Yeah, like during legislative session, you quickly get to know all of the lobbyists for the chamber. And I like them all because they're all very reasonable people. They will always come with a reasoned argument about why something shouldn't change or why it should change or what the repercussions are.
So
Probably
it's not a department of government. It's just an organization.
It's a private organization.
You had
a
no
nonprofit.
idea. I just heard that term and
Probably some of those people should be in politics, but they're too busy running their businesses.
They're running business.
when you can affect change and you can see that you can make a real difference, and then you see the stuck quagmired nature of government, you're like, let me go do a business, right?
Right.
Like I get to make every decision.
Yep.
I can maximize, I can see the direct benefit to the fruits of my labor. I get to decide what pieces of equipment. I get to decide what time I wake up. I get to decide what goes on the website. And I feel like I'm a very good decision maker, and I like that, and I get to see the payoff,
Yep.
virtually instantly. And to versus say government, which you go through this whole thing and things take forever, and then it becomes, you start something to do one thing, and then it becomes this other thing by the time it's done. And I can see how that discourages very innovative and not just innovative, but people who just
Honest.
are really good at solving problems.
And they're honest.
Honest too,
See,
yeah.
that's why I'll never run for any position, because once you become a candidate, the party tells you what you're allowed to say and what you can't say. And as you can tell, I say what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So as a tenured professor, I have a whole lot of freedom to speak, and they can't touch me.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So I'll tell you exactly why we have a student loan problem. You're not going to hear that from very many other people in higher ed. I'll tell you, because I was in the middle of it and said it was wrong when they did it.
Yeah.
And they don't like it that I tell people, no, this is actually what we did. It's wrong.
Can you
let's hear it.
describe what tenured means exactly? Because I've heard that and I have some idea, but I think it's important for people to hear that as well.
Sure. So tenure actually goes back to the Greeks, that if you wanted to be a philosopher like Socrates, you did an apprenticeship, you worked with other people who were intellectuals. You gave you a test, and if you passed, then you got to be an intellectual with them. So it kind of meant that you went through some type of a process to become the thing that you want to be, which is any type of apprenticeship. If you think of the way the unions work, you're an apprentice, then you're a journeyman, then you're a master. So it's kind of like that. But the modern version of tenure in the United States goes back to World War I, because when Woodrow Wilson wanted to get into the war, there was a lot of professors, people in academia that kept trying to tell him, no, don't. We don't support you. You shouldn't do this. And he got them fired. And so they got attorneys. This is also where the ACLU kind of came about, because these were the attorneys that helped these professors. And they said, if we're going to have accountable government, the people need to be able to criticize their government even at the highest level. And oftentimes professors have the time and the wherewithal and knowledge to really criticize. They should be protected when they're doing that. And so tenure started in the 1920s after World War I to make sure that professors, if they wanted to speak truth to power, that the elected official couldn't get them fired. Academic freedom also got added in on that because those professors were also wanting to teach their students about what they were saying and why they were saying it. And so there was a certain, as long as you stayed within your field, a certain amount of protection that you had, that you could teach what you wanted to. Today, if you're at a community college, usually tenure is something that you can work towards for the first 4 years. And they want to know, how many classes are you teaching? Have you been evaluated? Are you being peer evaluated? How many conferences have you gone to? How many papers? So there's usually like a checklist that you have to go through. And then your peers on your last year do a complete evaluation of everything that you've done. And if they feel like you would be a good addition to the institution, they recommend you to the president to be given tenure. And if the president agrees, you get tenure. Once you're tenured, it makes it a whole lot harder to fire you. I can still be fired for certain things. Obviously, if I commit a felony, I'm going to be fired. But I have a lot of leeway as long as I'm staying within my field as a historian to say what my analysis is, or to provide you with information about things that I know about, to talk to my students about civics and to answer their questions if they want to know, what does government do and how they can look things up. I can tell you that members of the political parties here do not like me because I will call them out for things that they're doing that are not right. They have tried to get me fired. They have tried to put pressure on the institution where I work at to get rid of me. And then I usually have a text messaging conversation with that person and send them a definition of tenure. And then remind them that I'm tenured and you can't get me fired.
Interesting. So
it's kind of whistleblower protection for me.
I knew something about it, but I didn't know that much detail. And so that's decided upon by the institution for which you work for, the school for which you work for.
Yes.
Is that transferable in any way if you wanted to go to a different school? Like, how does that work?
It's not usually. And that's oftentimes why you don't see people moving between institutions. And if there is a move, so let's say we wanted to bring someone in to CSN that had a lot of specialized nursing knowledge. If we were like headhunting for that person, they would want to know not only how much are you paying, but they would want to know, does my tenure transfer? And so one of the powers that an institution president has is to grant tenure upon hire. Because there are some times we want to bring you in because you have a skill set that we absolutely need. And it's not just going to be the salary you ask, but you're also going to ask for tenure upon hire so that your tenure comes with you. And so usually people who are in high need fields, it will transfer, but for most, it's not going to.
That seems fair. That seems like a good system.
And especially at a community college, we're often doing that with people who have industry information and knowledge, because there are people like you that are specialized. We're not going to be able to find anybody else. If that's what you want, that's what we're going to give you.
Yeah.
Seems very strange. From what you're describing then, tenure provides you protection against political scrutiny?
It provides me against an abuse of political power.
But why would that only apply with colleges?
Well, sure. So it provides you protection in the form that if somebody wants you fired, there's a process that has to happen, right? Something like that, and what people have to vote on it or something. Like, how's that execute?
In the Nevada system of higher education, we have what's called the code. It's the handbook for the Board of Regents, and it's all the policies and the rules that I have to follow as a professor. Chapter 6 is the chapter on how you can fire a tenured professor. And so you have to go through a certain process where you have to document that the person did that thing, that it was a violation of policy, that it was something that was not protected by tenure. And then even after all that's done, then there's a committee of your peers, and I've served on these committees before, that has to come in and provide independent review of the process. And we get to ask the department chair, the president, whoever's involved, how did you make this decision? Can you show us the documentation? And then we get to provide a report on that just to make sure that it's not somebody that is being fired for a political reason, that they actually committed some type of an offense that's fireable.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think everybody should have that type of protection when you're dealing with people who are in elected office. They should not be able to fire you
Yeah.
or to get you fired.
We're meant to. There was some kind of amendment. It was really important. I think they
It's
did
called
it first.
the first, right?
But we're losing some of that now, I think. That's frustrating.
I sit on the board of the ACLU here. I am the type of person that the boundaries of the First Amendment should be very wide.
Yeah. That if somebody, there's a lot of like censorship culture now. And I think that if you think somebody's saying something so bad, you should just be able to disprove it and to have a counter there.
Right.
And through the public forum, you should condemn those. And those examples should be shown, right? People should be allowed to do the wrong thing, and it should be shown that that's wrong, rather than simply telling people that it's wrong and that you can't
Right.
do it. I'm pretty absolute on freedom of speech. I guess there's a question when it comes to, calls to violence and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
you
which
can't
is
say you're
not
gonna kill
which is
somebody.
not protected.
Right, yeah.
But somebody who says they're a freedom of speech absolutist is not specifically talking about the law. So I clarify,
Right.
Because some people believe, you can call for the death of somebody if you want. Not that
can-
you should, but some people believe that you could. I mean, how can you have a revolution to overthrow the British who without calling for violence? So, I mean, well, you try reasonable means first.
It has to do with so we all have a bubble of rights around us, and your bubble of rights and my bubble of rights exist at the same time. Your bubble of rights can't encroach on my bubble of rights. And so there has to be a point where if we're interacting and we're just having a debate and we're just talking about things, but if you threaten to hurt me, then I would have the ability to say, I have the right not to be hurt.
Yeah.
And so, but people forget that, and I guess this is why I like living in Vegas, is we're like, you do you and I'll do me and we'll just exist and that's fine. But there's kind of this, your right to swing your fist ends where my nose begins.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah.
what the court's always having to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even to raise your fist is
Right. At what point
yeah.
has my right actually been violated?
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people have to figure out, when you think about the First Amendment, before you think about punishing somebody for something they said, you have to first think about, were you just offended? Could you just walk away? And did it really have
Did
any
it really get into
kind
your
of
bubble?
Did it
Yeah.
really
If it
have
didn't-
any impact on you that you cannot recover from? I mean,
People
it's
are allowed to be
the-
assholes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then
Yeah.
you can walk away and not have them
Well,
in your
there's a
circle.
lot of. Well, I don't know that we want to get into a whole talk about cancel culture, but yeah, I don't know that. Well, I guess I'll just say this part, and we'll go wherever we go, I guess. But I'm not sure that these people are actually being offended. I think that the whole thing is manipulation.
It's performative.
I remember when I was naive enough to think that they were offended and thinking that maybe we should tell them that they should be more rational. But then you realize that they're wielding power and that it's manipulative in nature.
And they don't want to have an argument based on the merits because they can't win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then this was another thing. I'm doing my homework. I'm trying to get ready for this. And I can imagine scenarios in which a guest is doing certain things and how I'm going to have to wrestle with that. And so one of the things when it comes to this offense thing is people won't engage with an idea. They'll just turn it into something else. And so it's like, well, we have a problem, say at the border or something, right? And they'll be like, well, this and that, and these people, not that. And they'll turn it into this whole political thing about whatever, but they won't even talk about the actual issue. They'll just talk about this person and that person and this
Right.
party and that party. But what about the issue? Shouldn't we know something about that? Shouldn't we look at that and understand that before we even
It's
decide?
the root of the problem.
Right.
Yeah, we need to understand that before we even worry about who's saying what or who has an opinion about what or who stands to gain. If you don't even understand what's actually going on, to then like put all these boundaries on it, that's ridiculous. And that's a lot of people are doing that, you know. They're like, "Oh, well this is going to be this and that." And it's like, "Well, hold on. Let's talk about what's actually going on first." Yeah, that's a serious problem.
Usually it's going to disrupt their system that they
Right.
have is why people are offended. It's going to hurt them somehow.
Well, they build their identity and their sense of being around a set of
And
ideas.
usually they have some privilege or there's some access to power that they have that they're afraid they're going to lose. And so they don't want to actually have an argument based on the merits. Because what
Yeah.
I have found with people like that, when they come at me just trying to silence me, is I'll say, well, debate me. Name the time, day, place, debate me. And that usually shuts them up.
Yeah. I also think that we should be having debates that are actual debates. We're like we've really lost that. It's about a debate should be exploratory. I should come to the debate and each side should receive a portion of information that actually changes the opinion. And then but things have become so polarized and politicized that the idea that I change any bit of my opinion with your new information is a loss or a weakness, or I was dumb, I was wrong, I was weak.
But like when
but
you
that's
just
so
said,
silly.
when you just said, why do 5 people moving forward? Wouldn't more people be better moving them into the general election? What did I say? I said, yes, but what we've seen is that when you show people polls and people actually interact, if it's over 5, they tend to not want to engage because it's too much. And you said, oh, okay, that makes sense. Oh, there.
Yeah, exactly.
We just
yeah.
had a little conversation and exchanged information.
And then I
went,
also didn't
okay,
understand that that's 5 people on the ticket, and then an endless number of people can kind of go
Anybody.
to the so there were clearly boundaries that I didn't understand, and I could assert that I understood them, and I could have had some position because I heard some whatever.
Right.
The person I liked told me this, and therefore, but we really need to get on critical thinking. I did take some school. I took a bunch of community college, and one class I took, this woman passed out the woman professor passed out this test and it was a critical thinking test, and I really want to get in touch with this person. I want to give them their credit because they told me, and I believe them because it very much seemed to be true that they created this test. It was a brilliant test. It was so brilliant, and it was such. I was the only person who got 100 on the critical thinking test, and it was so clever. And so the first question was like, um, is something or other like ishabaja buja, and it literally had like gobbledygook words there,
Right.
and it said like always, never, and then I don't remember. There were some other things, and the correct answer was sometimes or often or
Sometimes,
something,
because
right?
an absolute is
Yeah,
usually a logical fallacy.
Exactly right. Yeah, and so I was like, of course, right? I knew that right away. And then there were more things like exactly like that, and where and people were like, oh, I don't understand. Oh, you can't even make up these words. This test is impossible. The whole class was bitching and griping. I was having a fucking blast. This is the greatest test. I was like, this is it. Here we go. And I did, and I aced it because I immediately I got it. Like they were just logical concepts, and I was good at that. There's a lot of things I'm not good at, but I was good at that.
You just think you're not good at them. You just didn't have somebody teach you the right way.
Well, maybe, sure.
Because I have students tell me that all the time. Oh, I'm really good at math, but I've never been good at history. I don't write well. And I'll say, okay, well, what if I told you history's algebra? And then they look at me just the way you're looking at me right now. What is she talking about? And they say, okay, so if I have again, it's always easy to conceptualize the Civil War over here. And as a historian, I'm trying to figure out what is the formula that led to that. I need to be able to make sure, like an algebra problem, that I'm adding and subtracting variables that get me to people shooting at each other at Fort Sumter. And so as I'm going along, I need to be adding and subtracting and moving things around. And then I keep running the equation until it says Civil War on the other side. So
Yeah.
every one of the variables, if I'm talking about the Mexican-American War, the Compromise of 1850, is part of my algebraic equation. I just need to put them together in a way where they fit, and then
Yeah.
I get my result.
Yeah.
It's math,
Exactly. And people need to I understand that exactly.
right? And then the
Yeah.
student does, oh, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm like, see, it's math.
Yeah. And there's a lot that people don't understand because they don't understand the perception of the time. And you have to understand the perception of the time.
Right.
which
Context is a variable.
A big part of what those variables are, right?
Exactly.
You know, the thinking at the time was this. We'd never encountered this, so you wouldn't consider
So
this.
students will say to me, oh, well, we fought the Civil War for equality. And I'll say, really? Did everybody think women were equal at the time? Is that what they were fighting for? And they'll go, oh, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, then take that variable out because it was not there.
Yeah.
That's later.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things they were fighting for that was related to equality, but not equality because they kept telling the women, not you.
Yeah.
Specifically told the women, not you.
Well, the North didn't need slave labor because the Industrial Revolution is a part of it too,
They
right?
had a lot of they had immigration. They had immigrant labor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
labor's on both sides. And one of the things the South said is you treat immigrants as bad as we treat slaves. So what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was kind of a valid dig at them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right? But when you really get down and you look at Reconstruction under the Radical Republicans, which is who Lincoln was working with, their goal was to do this, establish free market capitalism in all parts of the country, and we will be fine.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it that way. But that's what they were doing.
We should.
We should. That's the way I do.
Yeah. I know that it was that abolishing slavery was a byproduct of the agenda, not the agenda. Right?
If we're going to have free market capitalism in the whole country because we can't have two economic systems. It was not working. It was never going to work. If you have capitalism, you have supply and demand. You can't have most of the population in the South making no money and not buying things. That does not equate in a capitalist system. Mm-hmm. They need to be working and making money and purchasing things for the economy to work. There you
Look,
go.
guys, that sounds like it makes a lot of sense. However, I've not been taught that way actually in school too. So going back to school and being in school, those words and that concept, the way that you're presenting that, it's not part of the lecture. It's not
Right.
part of the textbooks.
Yeah.
Not in
So
K-12.
that's also a component that we're missing.
Yeah. I also have a problem with the fact that we teach history in elementary school and then we tell people in middle school that was wrong. And then we tell them in high school that was wrong. And then you tell them in college that was wrong. And then we get here to the real world. And by the way, that last thing, also wrong.
So what I also then show my students though is that there's not one history. So I can
Oh, for
say
sure.
there's many different realities because I can say 2 + 5 is 7, 4 + 3 is 7. They're all equaling 7, but they're different.
Sure.
And so when you're looking at history, what you're experiencing and I'm experiencing are going to be different, even though in general the same thing is happening. When we talk about what just happened, we're going to tell different stories, but it all equals 7.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that there's an absolute truth. I believe that no
7
one
is the truth, but how did
Yeah.
you get there?
Exactly. No one and no one has the truth. The truth is only arrived at probably after the fact, hindsight, where you look at all the perspectives and you start to see what was really going on. And even there, I know that history will always have some form of distortion,
Right.
which is sad, but it's the best we
Or
can
it
do
could
for
be
now.
exciting because then there's X you have to solve for. So if you've got all these variables, you have 7 divided by 4, but then there's always, historians always will tell you there's X that still needs to be solved for, that your equation is never complete because you don't know every perspective, you don't know every document, you don't know every experience, so you always leave X in your equation
Yeah.
to solve for.
Yeah, I understand that. But but even some of the values for which you're adding together to solve for X have some distortion on them.
Oh, yes. Oh, for
Right.
sure.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
when I was on the dating apps, I'm 6 feet tall. It might only be 5'11" and a half, but my doctor says that's 5 3/4 you're rounding up to begin with. But, you know, in the end, right? And
Right.
history will show whatever, you know, right? But
Because, I mean, for instance, there were 3 abolitionist movements. There wasn't just one. We only talk about the radical abolitionists with William Lloyd Garrison, and those are the ones that were talking in Bible verse and it was immoral, and that's usually what you're going to get in a K-12 history book. There was also moderate abolitionists, which were the capitalists who said we can't have 2 economic systems operating at the same time. We need one. And then there were free soilers, which is where Abraham Lincoln was, where they were saying we need a gradual abolition of slavery. So we're just going to say it can't spread into the West. And then we're going to bottle it up in the South, and then eventually it will go away, but it's going to be something that's gradual. So if you have your equation and one of the variables is abolitionism, I would ask you, which are you accounting for all 3?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
usually we only put 1 when there were 3.
Interesting.
See, that's the way my students look at me.
I mean, of course there is. There's look at any position now,
There's
And-
always going to be multiple.
multiple, right? You know, you ask people how should the border be handled, for example, which is a nice problem to get people thinking because it's fairly new. I'll say to some degree, or at least the escalation, and so people are not so like enthralled in the various ideas, and so you're going to get a lot of different answers.
So yes, Texans and Minnesotans think very different about the border.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huge
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Texas
Yes.
has most of the border
They're getting
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
with Mexico.
Yeah. They made that. They were like, how can we have the maximum border? What if we draw it diagonally and squiggly? We have the most border surface we could possibly
Oh,
have.
Texas. Texas always has got a weird history.
Yeah.
The Texans thought they were going to take all of Mexico. And eventually the U.S. government said, no, you're not. Stay on this side of the border.
Interesting.
Stop picking wars. Stop
Yeah.
doing that.
Huh.
But I could say something like, oh, well, let's bring back the Bracero program.
What's that?
So during World War II, when we had so many American men going off to war, we didn't have enough people to work in the factories and to work especially in the agricultural fields.
Oh, I
And
know.
so if you were a Mexican laborer and you wanted to come into the United States, especially to work in agriculture, you got a card and you could travel back and forth across the border freely. So they would come, they would work, they would go back home. Basically, we knew who they were. They came here and they worked. They were legal and they could go back and forth and they kept their family in Mexico. So why not do that again?
I still want to keep the money here.
Yeah,
they're
there's a
they're
lot
still
to
going to
that.
spend money while they're here.
I mean, if their
Well-
family's there, I'm sorry, they're still going to use a lot of
But
the
yeah,
money there.
okay, then they're going to need to bring their family, and then we would have to discuss how we would do that. But that's any worker's going to have a family.
Yeah.
But it
Well,
would be all be legal, and we would know what was going on.
a lot of the southern border issues, in addition to the obvious things, a lot of that has to do with money exiting the country, the drug trade,
Oh,
the border thing,
yeah.
the whatever. All of that is effectively wealth that is removed from the country permanently.
Well, in
And so
addition to
that's-
poisoning and killing our citizens.
Talking about fentanyl, yeah.
Yes.
But my point is the wealth thing is a factor that a lot of people don't fully understand.
Yes.
That was a big part
Oh
of
yeah, if you just look at how much money goes out through Western Union, where money gets sent back to
Yeah.
all around the
Oh.
world, there's a ton of money that goes
yeah,
out.
yeah, not so Western Union. Well, I guess there's because
I mean, you need to do wire transfers now, but yeah, there's a lot of money that goes out.
Yeah. Well, I meant the weird. It leaves the Western culture is the joke. But I guess is South America, is that Western? I don't even know. It's not a part
Yeah.
of Western culture, is it?
Yeah,
It's
it's
somewhat West.
European based. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, because I teach Latin American studies, if you look at the violence that's perpetrated against people in Latin America by the drug cartels, they want the drug cartels dealt with as well. Because it's just, I mean, in a lot of rural towns in Mexico, the drug cartels run everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And a lot of times families are fleeing the drug cartels just because of the violence.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. You work for them, and if you don't,
They kill you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to do something about drugs.
That's got to be dealt with.
We need to teach people the fucking opium wars. I'm sure you know all about the opium wars.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about the founding of this country, this country was founded by religious fanatics and drug dealers, because the whole South was based on tobacco. And the reason that the southern colonies became very wealthy was selling that drug into Europe, and that was where the first drug trade started happening. But you have to deal with supply and demand.
So we didn't have tobacco before America, or we did, or it
Tobacco
was just...
first came out of the Caribbean through Spain, but tobacco is indigenous to the Americas. So we did not have it. There was no tobacco in Europe or Asia.
I
They had
definitely
other
learned
things, but
something
not
there,
that.
huh? Okay.
Great.
Where's it?
Yeah, no. I mean, the southern colonies made their money selling nicotine, selling a drug.
Yeah, I knew that they did the tobacco. Now I'm recalling some of this, but I guess the problem is, this is another thing we have with school and stuff. I wasn't invested when I heard that, and it didn't seem interesting.
But if I said to you, this country was founded by religious fanatics and drug dealers, I have your attention now, don't I?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, there you go.
That's a good way to do it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my students are always expecting me to say something or to have a picture on the screen, and them to go, what the heck is she talking about now?
Yeah.
Like if I said to you,
Is sugar...
we should talk about Alexander Hamilton. What an asshole. And the students are like, what? I'm like, you don't think he was? Do you want to defend
I've
that?
heard this.
And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, we'll listen to my lecture. We'll get to the end, and then you tell me whether he's an asshole or not. Now I have your attention, and you're going to pay attention to my whole lecture about the National Bank and the Assumption Plan and all the boring stuff that he did. And then we'll talk about him cheating on his wife at the end, and then you'll say he was an asshole. But that's what you have to do when you're talking about history and you're talking about tariffs and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Is you have to have a story that goes along with it that grabs people's attention, and then make sure you're using plain language and kind of just walking them through it.
Yeah. I'm over here racking my brain about the Hamilton show, trying to remember what I know about Hamilton. I'm like, quick, come up with something.
Oh, you mean the play?
Musical.
The music we watched? Yeah.
When we went to see that at the Smith Center, my husband turned to me and said, "Don't yell anything out." And I said, "I'm not making any promises."
Well, it's a great show. It's a great musical, yeah.
Burr shoots and kills him.
Mm-hmm. So we think that's a good thing.
I think his policies were good, though.
The policies that he put in place are
Well, he had
still
some
the policies.
international banking ideas and shit, right?
No, the Fed, was his national
Fuck
bank.
that.
He was the one that started that. The founding fathers split over the national bank.
Do you understand like how much of your money the government takes?
Oh, if you add it all up,
Yeah.
it's
All the
most of the
tax.
money that you make.
Oh, it's more than that. It could be as high as 75% of the money that you make, right? Because you have all these taxes from your income. Then you have all these other taxes that you pay for like property and things. Then you have all the sales tax. But then the government just goes and prints the money and dilutes your currency by half. And so like they can be at any given time taking 75% of all the money and just clawing it back. And then they effectively redistribute that money because the government doesn't just hold money; they spend it on stuff, and they don't redistribute it back to you.
It depends. No, if
Yeah.
you're one of those favored people that's getting the favors.
Yeah, if you're a government contractor who goes to those parties, and you're
The argument between John Adams and Hamilton on the one side, who wanted the national bank, and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison on the other side, that said, no, we see what you're doing. You're just going to take everybody's money and give it to rich people.
Mm-hmm.
And Hamilton said, yeah. And literally that was the fight over the national bank that went on for about 40 years.
Part of that argument, well, the rich people know what to do with the money, so they should have the money.
yeah.
The people that have the resources should have the
You
money.
want the wealthy to be invested in the country, and then that way they'll make sure that the country doesn't
which
fail.
is
Yeah.
not all of a bad idea.
No.
I can understand that.
Yeah, I think that's a concept that people don't truly understand about capitalism, is that there is a betterment, or there's not what I lost my train of thought for the words there, but there aggregation of resources to people that do more, because there are people that do more, is for the betterment of humanity. There is ultimately some benefit to disproportion in wealth, and people, they just cannot understand that.
But you also have to make sure that in a demand and supply system, demand has to be there. And so you have to be thinking about it. And unfortunately, we have lots of policy that helps with the supply part, and then kind of the demand drags along. And that's how we end up in recessions, is all of a sudden the demand will fall off, and then we have to figure out how to get it to come back. Yeah. And so that's usually what the argument is how are you balancing? And so what Jefferson and Madison were saying is you're putting too much on the scale on this side, not enough on this side. It's going to cause problems.
Because you are rich also does not mean that you know what to do with the money.
Yes, especially now when you inherit money.
Yes.
Yeah. And so people are going to assume that I think that way because I have money now. But I grew up way, way below the poverty line. Like when I was a child, I was homeless. My father had problems with drugs, so there were times of homelessness, starvation, just extreme poverty. Right? I remember feeling like we'd made it when we had enough stability to receive welfare because they could come and deliver the goods to us, and that's a crazy fucking concept for some people that have no idea that the idea of receiving welfare only comes when you're not homeless.
Right.
And is a measure of success when they consider that to be the bottom. That was high status for me at a certain point, right? Yeah. And that was an incredibly awkward feeling too. And then, so I had all of that and so much struggle. And then eventually I moved when I was about 15 to live with my grandparents. There was a lot of up, down, trauma, turmoil. And then I saw a completely different way of life. My grandparents live in Tysons Corner, Virginia, which is the city part of Fairfax County. And Fairfax County and Loudoun County are the two richest counties.
Counties.
Sorry, counties. Yeah. In America. And for example, those neighborhoods of $25 million that I'm talking about are in Fairfax County, right? They're there on the other side of the river from Georgetown, kind of down the way. There's insane amounts of money. And so I have a very good understanding of rich thinking and poor thinking and some of the pitfalls to the two of them. And I certainly don't think that people should experience anything close to the hardships that I did. And anyone who thinks, oh, well, you're stronger now because you went through that. No, I mean, I have some insights, but ultimately there's a debt that I'll never recover from those extreme hardships. They're not falling and scraping your knee is something that makes you stronger. Getting in a car accident and losing your leg does not fucking make you stronger. Like we need to be real and manage this saying of these hardships make you stronger, because at a certain point they don't.
They don't.
You'll never recover.
You lose that time,
right?
And you will never get it back,
right?
Yeah.
But see, that's why I would never work any place but a community college, because we bring people into our doors like you and all kinds of other people who understand that they can make their life better. That if they can get some type of training and get an education, that they can help make their life better. And then a lot of times I have students that have stories like yours, but they're there. And so my job is to say, okay, here you are. This is what you're going to need to do to make it out in the world. Let's get you trained. But then I feel it's also my responsibility to talk to policymakers and say, if they're going to do the work and they're going to do everything that you say that they're supposed to be doing to be successful, I expect you to make sure there's policies that do that. I'm not going to put them out into the world after they did everything you said they should do and then still have them struggle. And so I need policies that reward people for checking the boxes and doing exactly what you want them to do to be responsible adults. Once they get out into the world, they should be successful. And so I spend a lot of time looking at policies to make sure that as people are coming through the system I'm in, that when they get out, if they're working hard and doing what they're supposed to do, they should be stable. They should, like you just said, they should be able to say, sure, I had a hard time, but I'm making it now. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, sometimes our policies don't align with that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that needs to change. I just don't even understand why we tax people who make under a certain amount. And I guess, some people would probably try to manipulate that to always be under that amount, but to some degree, we should just really just take that off of those people. Their cumulative effort is minuscule anyway, right?
Right.
So yeah. Anyway, aggregation of resources was the other thing I was on. I mean, you can't build a podcast studio if I don't have some form of excess funds, right? That and then I build this, I deliver this. Hopefully, I bring ideas to light that reshape things and make things better. For example, something I could do with the aggregation of resources is buy all this stuff, buy all these expensive cameras. I mean, this is tens of thousands of dollars. I take this tens of thousands of dollars and create this thing and present it to people, and then I can share the hardships that I went through and ultimately mold things to where people are more aware, the ideas get exposed, and then I prevent that hardship, right? Yeah. And I realize some people are not doing that. Some people are just going on vacations all the time. Okay, sure. But you still cannot have this without that disproportion.
Right.
Right?
Well, here's something I also think that you're doing, and that's the reason I'm here. So when you look at the way political culture has developed in our country and a lot of places, because it's in Latin America too, politics has been dominated by men for a long time. Not always, because when we were hunting and gathering, men were usually off hunting and women were running things. And so women did things the way they do it. And women were much more likely to have conversations with other women and to talk things through. And when the men came back, then to talk to them about what was going on. So women oftentimes did a lot of talking, and the men would often have to go off and hunt and go to war. When women kind of get isolated onto the farmhouse and we're not talking with each other anymore, and men are kind of controlling things, the art of speaking to each other gets degraded and it's not valued as much. With social media, I think that's one of the things that we have to figure out how to do is how do you make social media actually be social? Instead of just isolating people, how do we communicate better with it? Because we're not doing that, and I think that causes a problem. But I think our political culture in this country is based on people yelling at each other, advertising at each other, sending horrible mailers in the mail, and not really spending a lot of time having conversations. And so for me, and this, we saw this with ballot question 3. With ballot question 3, we needed to have conversations. I needed to sit with people and talk to them and do demonstrations and answer questions and talk more. And the consultant said, no, that's not the way we do politics. We do ads and we do mailers, and that's all. And that's why it failed. So I commend you for just wanting to sit and talk.
Yeah. And this show's not entirely going to be about politics either, right? But it's
talk about
something.
Anything.
Yeah.
Talk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talked about abolitionists and everything too, but yeah, exactly. This show is about finding the truth, and no one can ever know the whole truth about anything or everything, but you could try real hard. And the more like we talk to, the more we explore, but yeah, the social media, the whole thing, there became this acceptable culture to call names. And I think that is a serious problem. Anybody that's been on the internet has been called sexist or racist or bigot or fascist or phobic or stupid or whatever. All these things.
I've been called those things in real life.
Sure. But people throw those things out so loosely. My political journey, well, I'll eventually talk about that, but I just started asking questions. The next thing I know, I didn't have a political opinion. I didn't. But then people assumed because I didn't immediately agree with them that therefore I did have a political opinion and that therefore I was racist, sexist, whatever. So, which is something I would argue could have only happened on social media, but now because it has happened on social media, now it happens in person. If it didn't happen on social media, then it probably would have never happened in person. Why would you become so instantly adversarial with people? And it's so fucking juvenile, and it's manipulation, right? Their goal in calling me names is to get me to apologize and to accept their position, but I'm never going to do that, right? And they don't know that on the internet. Just some whatever,
Right.
But yeah, it's so toxic.
It's childlike behavior.
It is absolutely.
So it's childlike communication.
Yes.
When we sit and talk to each other in person, you can usually have an adult conversation where you're not just doing ad hominem attacks. You have to actually have merits, and you talk about your argument and I talk about mine, where children just name call. And so social media is like at this child level of communication, not always, but oftentimes. And then I think we all get stuck not knowing, well, what do we do about that?
Yeah, well, we have to socially condemn people that are doing those things, right? So I struggle with like the balance, like because I see a problem, and then I want to create rules for that problem. But then I know damn well that if you start creating rules, those rules eventually get used in a different way than they were intended. And I think about, to be honest, there's really not that many racist people. There's really not that many sexist people. There's not that many whatever, all those things. And so, should I put rules so that you can't say those things? Well, no, because, you want to be able to do that. I think they're being used too liberally. Maybe, and then what do I do? How do I measure that? And then let's say I do measure that. Let's say I go and I say, this person uses these words this amount of time per interaction. Well, now you're just rebuilding the social credit score a different way. That's not good either. And it's like, well, how do we do that? Like, Jesus, come on now. And why have we even, identity politics is a major problem. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we need to do something about it. I don't know what to do about it. I know that we need to condemn people that are just throwing these things out there. I also know that there's people who are in positions of influence who are telling people, like, don't have Thanksgiving with your family if they voted the wrong way. What? I mean, did they buy stock or like some Civil War insurance thing that they get a payday if there's a civil war? Because that's the only thing I can think of that would be the incentive for doing something so nefarious, is that you get a payoff if the country burns. Like, that's ridiculous.
But I mean, we can tell what I do on social media is what I would tell my kids to do if there was somebody on the playground they didn't get along with. Go find someone else to play with. So on social media, when I run into those people, I just block them.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but we also need like some form of.
You wanted to build some way to correct people, to navigate them to think or respond differently. I think that's what your goal is.
Yeah, I think blocking people is dangerous, or having the ability to block people. You create an echo chamber too, right? That's also, I
mean, I have like 5,000 people I follow on social media platforms, and so I don't block very many people. Oftentimes I just ignore people when they're being obnoxious.
Yeah, generally we're talking not about you specifically, what you're doing, but you don't want to give everybody that ability to do that and think immediately, if I have that interaction with them, that's what I'm going to do. And that should not be a knee jerk either. If you're not saying something I don't want to hear, I'm just going to not listen to you. Right. And that way, that's one way.
There's a lot of people on Facebook that if they discover your politics and it's different from theirs, they just block you. They just do it. And they'll say nasty stuff and block you. And it's like, I know you, and I know you know those things aren't true. Like, because some of these people, I've been friends with them for a long period of time. But the second I say something that challenges what they say, even if it's not partisan, and I just try to get them to like talk about the idea instead of the hyperpolarized versions of the idea.
That's the problem. The two political parties have said, not do we just have two political parties, but we have to hate the other side.
Yeah.
You have to hate the other side.
So we have bad examples of these people in power doing this thing too, showing others that it's okay to do the same thing.
And that you have to hate people. You can't just disagree with them.
We need better leaders that will engage in the conversations.
Yes.
And we can't get those because we have political parties.
System that has allowed the political parties just to take over our democracy and to define how we do our democracy.
Yeah.
We need the ability to have people who don't want to play that game. They need to have the ability to get elected. Right now they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things. Well, like abortion, for example, right? This is a hugely debated thing. The people that this impacts is actually a small amount of people. But people are letting this be the deciding factor for them.
Because the political parties say, fight about it.
Well, yeah. And that's the least amount of what they're going to do, right? And yet people are like, I'm like, good God, there's a whole country to run. Like there's
But like this time, you have the Democrats put ballot question 6 on the ballot about abortion to drive out votes. And the Republicans put ballot question 7, which was the voter ID ballot question, to do the same thing. They just wanted to punch people's buttons and say, based on this one issue, we're going to get you all wound up, go vote. I'm like, those are important issues, yes, but talk about other things too.
How do those questions get on the ballot?
Yeah.
So not every state has the ballot petition process. Most of the Western states do, because the initiative, the referendum, and the recall were all responses to Gilded Age corruption, so 1870s, 1880s. It was a way to combat political corruption, to just give power to the people, to be able to recall people, to lock down laws, or to just pass your own laws. So because the Western states all came into the Union in that period, those reform initiatives got added to state constitutions in the West. So all the Western states have them. But every state does it a little bit differently. So in Nevada, if you're going to do an initiative, which means you're going to initiate some type of a change, it can either be a constitutional amendment or a law, statutory law.
Okay.
If it needs to be a constitutional amendment, then you go to an attorney. They can do, like we were talking before, they can do the conforming language. How would this fit into the Constitution? That's going to cost you money. You have to find an attorney that can do it. Then when you submit it to the Secretary of State's office, there's a form that you fill out and you say, as a citizen, I would like to do this initiative. There's a 15-day period where anybody can legally challenge it. At the beginning of your petition, you have to do a 200-word description. That's called the description of effect. You can have a legal challenge to say that your description of effect is not clear. And then there's a bigger thing called single subject rule. You can only do one thing in a ballot question. It can't be multiple things. If you get sued, usually what your opponents are going to do, they're going to sue you. What they want to do is drag you into court and waste all of your money. And so oftentimes this is why you see these big outside funders come in, because if it's something where the opposition is going to have a lot of money because it's the political parties or it's a corporation, I, as a citizen, I'm going to need to have money funding me as well to pay for the attorney and then to pay for the legal fees. While you're doing that, you also have to get a petition signed by a certain number of citizens. So for whether it's statutory or a constitutional amendment, it's 10% of the number of voters who voted in the last election cycle. So if your last election cycle was a presidential election, it can be up to 150, 160,000 signatures. If it was a midterm, then it's usually around 100,000 signatures. You divide it up into 4 congressional districts, so you have to have equal numbers of signatures from each of the congressional districts, and it can only be from valid voters. Somebody that's registered to vote right now can sign. When we qualified ballot question 3, and we had to have 172,000 signatures, it cost $1.7 million to do that. So again, that's another reason that you have to have outside funders in order to be able to do it. If all of your signatures are valid and they verify that they're valid, then it can go on to the ballot. If you do a statutory question, it's a very similar process. You get a little bit longer to do signatures, but instead of it immediately going to the ballot, it will go into the next legislative session as a bill, and then the legislature has the option of just taking your initiative and passing it as law. If they say no, then it gets kicked out to the next election cycle, and the people get to vote on it. So it's kind of a complicated process.
It sounds like it.
Where it sounds like, oh, we the people have all this power. And then when you try to do it, you realize, oh, I need about like $5 million to get an attorney and have signatures, and I'm going to get sued, and then I have to have advertising.
But even on the ballot, too, they turn it back into layperson speak, right? Because that's not how it's going to be actually written, right?
What you see on the ballot is actually the description of effect. It's the short summary. When you get the sample ballot, which is in that separate booklet that you get, that's where, which that's a ton of stuff in it. That's where they give you the description of effect. They give you a plain language explanation. Then they give you pro and con arguments that are written by advocates on both sides. You probably, if you look to see who wrote the pro ballot question 3 argument, my name was on there because I was in the citizen group that got to do the pro side. And then after that, it actually shows you in the Constitution exactly where the ballot question will fit in. And so that's usually where you get like 7 or 8 pages where it's very densely written, where it actually shows you where they're changing words and adding sentences, and that's the more technical part. And so if you want to actually see what will it look like in the Constitution, that's in your sample ballot. In the Nevada Constitution state level. Or if it's a law, where it would fit into the law. Because again, most of the time when you're proposing a new law, you're probably just amending what's already there. And so it will just show you where the amendments are in usually a different colored font.
We skimmed through there. We read some of the stuff, entire paragraphs.
It's a lot.
Well, I don't remember the language law change
what
piece,
happens,
but maybe it was that last thing that was confusing, I guess.
What happens is we went to the internet after we got the booklet and saw there was a bunch to read.
Yeah.
And then that's how we found you.
Especially when there's 7 questions, that makes the sample ballot like this long.
Right.
And so one of the things I did is I actually read through the whole sample ballot for all the ballot questions and recorded myself on Zoom doing it so that people could do them like one at a time. So I could also explain, this is what this is. This is the plain language description from the attorneys that run the legislature. This is the amendment that's actually going to go into the language that's in the Constitution. But I just told most people, read the pro and con arguments. That's
Yeah.
We actually had someone in our neighborhood also reach out and had offered their suggestions on the way that the items should be voted on based on other meetings that they had gone to, I guess, outside of the community, based on the party that they were belonging to, which I thought was kind of nice as well. So it's still getting here, and I think that's information that people should know that they're listening to this.
right.
They said to vote against it, which of course they're party affiliated to some degree. And so of course you're going to get that from both sides, which is really sad, and then
But because I have a lot of Democrat friends and a lot of Republican friends who said, no, I'm going to have to vote against that. And I said, okay, can you walk me through why you're against it? And if they could go through and say it's new or I don't trust the software, whatever, I would say, okay, that's fine. But if all they said to me is that the party told me to say no, then I'm going to say, well, can I have like 5 minutes of your time to let me explain to you why I think you should say yes?
Fair. How many of them took you up on that?
Most of them did. And they would say, can you do it in 5 minutes? Because I've heard it's really complicated. And I said, I can do it in 3.
Yeah. I could probably do it in less.
Right? Because I would go on like radio shows and stuff, and they would say, "So we have 30 seconds left. Would you like to explain ranked choice voting?" I can do it now.
Yeah.
Because there were a couple times where I went, "Sure."
Yeah. Well, I think about it. It's like, okay, well, you get to pick from a broader selection of candidates that aren't owed to parties, and you get to rank that so that if the person you think is best isn't most popular, you still got some other options in there. A computer does it. It's incredibly accurate. It's incredibly fast. Yeah, maybe you have to be informed on more candidates, but you were never being accurately informed on the ones that were like bought by the political parties. Right. So it's just that simple.
And
it's power back to the people.
Is I would say the default for ballot question 3, if it goes into effect, is you're voting the same way that you are now. Mm-hmm. You'll pick one person in the primary for each of the races, and then you can rank up to 5. And so if you want to be one and done, you can just do that. So you can vote exactly the same way you are right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think the language being used to describe some of this is a problem. Where they say that person didn't win, so those votes get thrown out or something like that. They don't actually get thrown out. That's a horrible descriptor, and I think that freaks people out.
They purposely used that. They're going to throw your ballot out, is what they said. And I kept saying,
it's not going to count. That's not it.
Yeah, well, okay, if you vote for the person who loses now, you lose. It's the same. It's the same.
Yeah, yeah.
But here's what they don't tell you right now with mail-in voting. Over 9,000 ballots got thrown out in this last election because of the signature cure problem.
Yeah.
9,000. And so I've asked my friends who kept telling me that ranked choice voting was going to cause errors and ballots were going to get thrown out. I've asked them, are you going to get rid of mail-in voting? Because 9,000 voters actually did have their whole ballot thrown out in this election. So you can't tell me we can't do ranked choice voting because you think ballots are going to get thrown out, but you like a system which is actually throwing out ballots.
Yeah, my signatures never match.
I vote in person. I will not use the mail-in ballot.
We voted in person as well, but my writing doesn't match. Right. You cannot do. I think it's steganography. So steganography is where you look at the letters and the handwriting and you assess if it matches something. You cannot do steganography against me, which maybe sounds cool, but it just means that I like really suck at writing. Like I literally don't shape my letters consistently at all. I don't even, you're supposed to start at one and then do whatever. I don't even always do that pattern. Like sometimes I'll like draw like the first letter of my name 3 different ways.
I'm not teaching kids cursive writing anymore. And so one of the things that I know happened up at UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, is you had a bunch of college students show up to vote in person. And when they signed on the poll book, the little pad that you sign on, their signatures would not match. No matter how many times they wrote their signature, it wouldn't match because they print their signature. And so you had hundreds of students who were being told they weren't going to be allowed to vote. So what they did instead is they canceled all their voter registrations and they re-registered them same day and just accepted whatever signature they put on that new registration and then let them vote a provisional ballot.
This is just a horrible authentication method.
And so that is already a problem that needs to be solved because over 9,000 in the presidential preference primary, it was 6,000 ballots. In the regular primary, it was 4,000 ballots. And so I have these Democratic friends who keep telling me you're going to disenfranchise people with ranked choice voting. And I'm like, you're doing the same thing with mail-in voting and saying nothing about it.
Yeah, or even party, yeah.
And I'm like, you can't do the double standard. Fix the problem.
Yeah.
Just fix the problem.
Yeah.
Speaking of writing your signature. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say we'll take a break, but say your piece. I can just edit out this break section.
I wanted to talk about, in conjunction with signatures, we, as a family, took the literacy tests in Louisiana that they had many years ago. And what was it, 15 or 16 questions?
Yeah.
And the instructions were you have 10 minutes to get it done or something ridiculous amount of time, which seemed bonkers for us to even think about doing that many questions in that time. But then if you got one wrong at that time, you couldn't vote.
Right. Which is actually unconstitutional. You can't have poll taxes or literacy tests, according to the U.S. Constitution.
What part of the Constitution says that?
Oh, so we got the 24th Amendment is poll tax. Let me see which is the one that goes literacy tests. Because that was especially prevalent in the South.
I'm trying to learn as much of the Constitution as I can. Do you know all the amendments?
Yeah.
I don't even know half of them. And I know more amendments by a factor of 2 than most people. And I don't know that many. But I know that people don't know them at all. Some people don't even know the First and Second Amendment. They can't even tell you what those things are, even though they're talked about all the time, because they just don't register. It just,
And what I tell people is you don't even necessarily need to know a lot about the amendments, but know where to get good information about the amendments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
So, because we're all tired of politics, and politics has no rules.
Yeah, and the major election's finally over, so we can move on.
It was I would love during our legislative session if we had referees with whistles. That when legislators are lying or hiding or not following open meeting law, somebody could whistle and give them a foul and send them over to the penalty box.
Well, I can see how that would be exploited quickly too, though.
If there was at least somebody saying these are the rules, you have to follow them, I would love that.
All right, where do we leave off? We talked about sports.
People voting and barriers to voting. I think voting should be as broad as possible for who gets to vote. But I also agree that we need to make it so that it's easy for people to be an educated voter.
Yeah, I really only want educated people to vote, because if you don't, then your vote basically becomes whoever wields whatever influence. And that's a major problem. But then the thing is, how is it even remotely possible to put parameters on there that ensure that only the people who are informed vote? And I don't know that there is.
I don't think you can, but if you make it easy for people, people want to go to watch football games and basketball games and soccer games, so we know people will show up to those type of events for certain reasons. If you can take events that people will show up to, music festivals, sporting events, stuff that people want to go to anyway, and start to integrate in civic engagement, public civics, so that they start to realize there's places that you can go to ask questions. I think community colleges need to be doing a whole lot more just to invite the public in if they have questions, so that they can talk to somebody like me or talk to one of my colleagues if they want to know more about things.
But I don't know that we should be activating people who don't want to be activated, because
It would still be free choice.
well, yeah, but you're just likely to get somebody to engage, but you've told them that they should engage, but they're not necessarily going to take all the extra steps and read all the information.
Well, then that's why the system also needs to be changed, so that we factor in that a certain amount of the population is just going to be reading their union's endorsement sheet or do what their political party told them or maybe what their neighbor said to do. That's going to be a factor that we have to account for. But then how do we build a system that accounts for that factor, but also makes it so that the majority of us who are engaging are able to have our voices heard?
I think there should be some kind of a voter class, maybe in some respect. You can't just go register to vote.
Well, right now
You
we
could
do automatic voter registration at the DMV.
Yes.
And we don't even say to the person, hey, new voter, you're registered to vote. Do you have questions? We have resources for you. We have a weekend that we're going to be doing things. Would you like to come join us?
Should be some kind of a class. You can even have it online. Never in Spanish, though. And I think that really should be a component. We have lots of other things that you have to drive to get a driver's license. You have to go to school to complete some course in order to become a doctor. You have to do other certain things before you get licensed to do X. Why is it not the voter registration?
Again, it has to do with the Constitution and the horrible legacy of literacy tests and the things that the South did. But I think if you were to make it so that it was an enjoyable thing that you wanted to do with your family, it was something that was online that you could just pop over and see what was going on.
Yeah.
We know with students, there are ways to get them to watch a video, engage in an event by making it something they want to do.
I'm entertaining the idea that maybe it's impossible to fix voting. And you're always going to have people that are just like really poorly informed. And let's pretend that you're always going to get the wrong candidate. And so perhaps if we and I know that we have some of this in the structure of government, but perhaps some sort of, transparency would do a lot. So even if you get the wrong candidate, if we have more transparency, then they're inclined to be driven in the right direction. And so that's a major factor. But some sort of better means of tracking the candidate after they've been elected to hold them accountable. Because you can't always hire the right person, right? Just look at it as hiring. You hire the wrong person. But then you have all these checks and balances there to guide them, or
so a quarterly review,
maybe something. But because the more I think about it, the more I think that any kind of parameter you put on voting is ultimately going to be exploited, no matter what it is.
It's never going to completely address the issue. Yeah. Because you run into those constitutional barriers, and so you always have to account for some people. But I mean, there's a lot of people who just vote based on an endorsement sheet.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And they just have somebody else think for them. I think that's a problem too, because you never know. I was hearing this. I did not recommend any of the endorsement sheets this year, because I was hearing from candidates who told me that there were other candidates that were paying different groups to have their name put on their endorsement sheet. So they didn't go through a process. It was like, oh, here's a donation. Oh, look, your name's on their endorsement sheet. So I was just telling people, don't do the endorsement sheets. If you want help, I can point you in the direction of getting information. But I think that's always going to be a problem. That's why I'm more focused, like you are, on the candidate side or the system side, so that it accounts for the fact that a certain number of people are just going to be uninformed.
Yeah. Well, we really just, I don't know what the solution is, but I also believe that there must be a solution.
I want more new people in the process that will whistle blow. Because
Yeah.
I know if I elected you and you got in and saw a bunch of dirty dealing, you would say something.
Yeah, I have to be frank, I'm autistic, and I absolutely just say the fucking truth.
I know.
Even if it doesn't benefit me. It's a blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just in my nature to expose the truth. And yeah, I would absolutely, and I have in the past, so, but that's also those are not the type of people that are getting elected. That's another problem, right?
But if we can get people elected that don't have to require donations or contributions, so they can stand independent of the party and they can stand independent of the donating class, then you're much more likely to think, I'm going to get elected because people are going to vote for me. So what can I do to get votes? So de-incentivize fundraising, incentivize getting votes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But I also see how that can, I'm like, okay, so I have this clever idea. We pretend that there's the ranked choice and that there's the open primary. And then I start making cool videos that are really informative, and I go and I win. And then that's over, and then there's the next time around. And so what are people going to do? They're going to make cool videos. Are they going to be as informative? Maybe not. And eventually,
Autistic?
probably I would, right? Yeah. And the next thing you know, it's like the most salacious ad video of just cool stuff and explosions, trying to get people to vote for.
Or celebrities being paid to endorse a candidate.
Yeah, well, that blew up in somebody's face. It didn't work.
I don't know. I'm just thinking, why would somebody do that?
Again, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because here's what I kept hearing from my students is, why won't they just explain to me their thing they keep talking about? Just tell me how that would work. That's what I was hearing from my young students. They were like, blah, blah, tell me how your $25,000 thing works.
It doesn't. It doesn't work.
And that's why they were skeptical. They were like, if she or he, and then they were all mad at him about the tariff thing, because they're like, why doesn't he understand tariffs? And they're like, okay, then they both seem to be lying to me.
Yeah.
And those students, too, are probably trying to understand how they're going to get out and make money enough to support a life like their parents have. And maybe their parents are talking about how hard it is for them right now. Right. I just know that the number of young people, I mean, our kid included, she's concerned about how she's going to be able to be out in the world.
Right.
And support herself.
Because my students were saying, so I can't even think about buying a house, but my rent is like super high. Why isn't is there a plan for that? Because I just can't pay rent.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the tariff thing, there's something called the big ask. And Trump wrote about this in his Art of the Deal. And the idea is that you ask for something big, and even if you don't get it, then you're more likely to come to an agreement when you ask for something small.
Sure.
And that kind of seems to be the play with the tariffs.
You should pick that, though, because that is so easy to read the explanation of what a tariff is, and he continually says it wrong, and then people wonder about him. It's a consumption tax. Consumers will pay it.
Yeah. Through a specific country, which will throttle the goods coming from that country, which will...
The importer pays the tax, so the country of origination doesn't pay the tax. The importer pays the tax. And then the importer has to decide whether they're going to whether they're going to eat the extra money they just had to pay in the tax or pass it along to the next guy down, who then passes it along to the consumer.
Well, frankly, it doesn't matter who pays it, because if the importer pays it, then the importer's going to affect that onto the country of origin, and it's still going to throttle. It's still going to have the same impact, no matter where you draw the line, right? You're still throttling goods and having an economic impact.
It's going to make everything coming into the country more expensive.
Yes. But that's not, and which will ultimately throttle the amount of goods, which is the intended effect, right? And the intended effect is not to throttle the goods. The intended effect is to get those people to bend to the will of whatever end game outcome by doing that. Like, oh my gosh, we're failing everywhere. All right, we got a wide angle here still. We're good. We'll check on those in a minute. But yeah, so I think that there's a lot to that. And I think the end game is about American manufacturing. And it may be a growing pain, right? I mean, I think that he talked about this on Joe Rogan, where he's like, yeah, of course things are going to go up in cost. But ultimately, once we bring manufacturing here, we'll be more stable.
Will that happen, though? Can you convince the corporations to come back from Thailand and Mexico and all these places where they're paying people pennies on the dollar?
Yeah, well, a lot has to change. Even if you could bring the labor here, it would not necessarily behoove you to manufacture here because of the cost of land, because of the cost of the surrounding resources, because of the regulations, because of...
Those are all the reasons they fled.
Yes.
And so unless you're changing all of that, why would they come back?
I mean, one would hope
and increasing the minimum wage.
One would hope that you would change those things in conjunction.
But then he needs to talk about those things.
Somewhat he has.
But he can't do that unless Congress works with him.
Well, yeah, obviously not.
Yeah.
And
So
no president has
because I mean, with the chip technology and stuff, Biden's been trying to get those to incentivize all that production to come back here for the last 3 years, and has only made a small dent in it.
Yeah. And I know that some of the key to this, well, we really need to get nuclear power. I don't know how you feel about that, but we need to get nuclear power here. We need to have power be abundant and cheap in America. That needs to be our top fucking priority. Then we can implement a lot of automated factories. And while, yeah, they're not labor intensive, that still is plenty of jobs. It's a lot of opportunity. And maybe the echo of jobs is not inside of the factory, but it's still surrounded by, all the trucking, all the whatever, I think that would be one major leap forward that we need to be doing. And we're not. We're like, we have like the least advanced factories in the few factories that we do have, and that is not good. And we still, energy costs are insane. To maybe I shouldn't say this. Well, I can edit it out later, I guess. But to operate all this equipment here, where we have the multiple studios and all these computers, our power bill is sometimes $1,100 a month.
Yep.
That is rent for people. That's a mortgage for some people. And it shouldn't be. We should have just excess power. I think that it's a lag, but AI will give us this, because a lot of the AI's here, and those people are going to consume a shit ton of power, and where our bargaining power as common people will go down before it goes up. But eventually, I think that will push things forward to give us cheaper power, which is, I think, very important.
But then that needs to be the focus. If that's the key for bringing manufacturing back, is to lower the costs. If energy cost is going to be the big kind of hurdle to get over, then that's what we need to be focused on right now.
Yeah, he mentioned something about it, but not at a satisfactory level. Like he said something about nuclear, but it was so.
It's always
not
the
a position.
Waste. It's always the waste. I mean, that's
waste is not
always
an
going to
issue.
be the thing in Nevada that we're always going to have a knee-jerk reaction to because of the problems that we
Because
have.
the waste comes here, yeah.
Yeah, as was Yucca Mountain and all that. It was like, oh, you guys don't have nuclear energy, but here's all the waste.
Yeah, manufacturing here, automation, power. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do about nuclear power, but they need to do it. We've come a long way since Chernobyl. We're not Japan on a teeny island where you can't get away from the ocean, because that was the Fukushima thing, is that basically Japan is like a long, skinny island, and they knew that they wanted to have the nuclear thing far from the ocean, but they can only get so far. And so, yeah, but we can stand to do this. There's a lot of myth about it, a lot of myth about the waste. I think that I'm not sure the volume of waste is nearly as cumulative as people perceive it to be. It's the insulation of the waste. And so once you have that massive facility and containers and other things, I think that you can still add to it fairly easily. I don't,
So the problem that you have is no one trusts the government.
Yeah, sure.
My family's all from southern Utah, so Cedar City, St. George. So when my mom was a little kid in elementary school, they were doing above ground testing at the test site here in Nevada. And there were days where they would say, oh, the wind has shifted, and so the fallout is now coming across St. George and Cedar City. Don't worry, there's nothing to be afraid of. Just stay in the house for a little while. It'll be fine. Now my family all has thyroid cancer and lung cancer and all these health problems because they basically were irradiated by the U.S. government. So if you look at, one day on YouTube, watch the film Atomic Cafe, where it shows the government repeatedly lying to the American people about nuclear testing and atomic testing and the bombs and the things that they were doing. And every time the people found out they'd been lied to and that people were dying and that there was all these problems, it eroded trust. And so when it comes to nuclear power, there's especially in this part of the country, no trust at all as far as the government saying it'll be fine. And so they're going to have to get over that credibility hump in order to be able to do it.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I don't know why you would trust that dropping a nuclear bomb on the soil near you was ever a good idea, but I guess, that's based on information we have now that they didn't have that.
Cover? Are you old enough to have done duck and cover?
I know what it is. I'm not old enough to have.
So I'm old enough to remember being told, and no one believed them, sure, just hide under your desk. If there's a nuclear war, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
We used to call it duck and kiss your ass goodbye.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of merit to it in the idea that if the blast wave hits your school, but you're below the plane of the ground, that you can protect yourself from the debris of the building falling on you.
Die.
Yeah. So I've survived an explosion, actually, that the blast wave damaged me and it killed some other people in the process. And effectively, being shielded from the shrapnel is only a part of the battle. So, I have some insights, and I think about the nuclear blast and the way that it travels and stuff like that. Arguably, you could be in a blast zone. If you're in a valley, you could literally just have the whole thing go right over you. It's still going to be nasty, and then you have to deal with the fallout. But your primary objective, or not objective, your primary means of survival would be just to be below the plane of the ground that takes most of the force. So once you're outside of that crater, all it does is travel along, and all it can do, the ground. And so if you're in a basement or whatever, right?
Question about the government being involved in nuclear power. What are the regulations that the government has imposed kind of prevent this nuclear power from being really built up by the private entities? Is that what we're fighting against?
The biggest problem is what you do with the waste. And so if you look at the whole history of Yucca Mountain, when Congress designated Yucca Mountain, because it's federal land, to be the nuclear repository for the whole country, the big argument was, how do you transport radioactive waste across the country and then to Yucca Mountain and make sure that it doesn't become a target for terrorist attack, that it doesn't have some type of an accident, which I've had a lot of people, now that we've had those lithium battery fires because the trucks have gotten into crashes here, and people have said, well, see, so what happens if you're transporting radioactive waste and you have one of those accidents happen? And so that was always the argument that went around it, was the transportation of waste.
But how often is the waste made? That also needs to be talked about. Like, what is that? Once a year? Once a week? Like, what does that even look like?
I don't even know, right? Yeah.
Well, right now there is radioactive waste that is being stored in Nevada, and it comes from hospitals. And so when you look at the gloves and the uniforms and things that people wear in radiology when they're taking x-rays and doing MRIs, those get packaged down and kind of ziplocked in, and that is out at the test site right now. It's compacted down into a small. You ever had one of those like bags that you put
vacuum,
and you suck the vacuum? Yeah, it's like that.
How can you do that with the radiation?
And so, that's kind of low level radioactive waste that's out there. But we're talking about the spent rods, the materials that are inside some of these facilities being transported across the country. And then obviously the people who control the strip did not want to have an accident happening in southern Nevada and completely wiping out our economy.
Yeah.
And so if you want to talk about the people who are most resistant to doing doing nuclear energy again, you're looking at it when you look at the strip.
Interesting.
Unless you can figure out what to do with the waste, you're going to have big interests like that are going to say no.
I do know that they use it too when people donate blood. Remember you talked to one of my former neighbors? Maybe you didn't talk to him. Maybe I remember talking to him. He still works at the Red Cross, and he goes into a special room that has radioactive material in there. You have to have a badge and have certain things, but he's worked there for forever. But I don't know what they do, but in that facility, they do something with radioactive material. A blood donation center. I'm sure there's other parts of what that business does, but yeah.
I don't think that you're allowed to build nuclear facilities, even if you had a plan for the waste under current stuff. We haven't
Because of
seen
regulations, is that?
Yeah,
They're trying to get 3 Mile Island up and running again.
yeah. There's some talk about that. Yeah. I mean, we've come a long way, and I do realize that there's obviously horrible things that could go wrong, but it kind of seems like a nut we need to crack at some point and hurdle. And nothing is without fault or problem. But yeah, here's something that people don't understand. Why electric cars over gas cars if coal burning and all these other things? Well, assuming that those carbon footprints are equal, and we obviously have issues with the transferring or the lithium and the batteries and stuff, but the elasticity of electricity is insane. You can take the electricity from your car and put it in your house, and you can take it from your house and put it into your car, and you can move that around. Sure, there's some losses, but gas and combustion engines, you have no ability to transfer that with much fluidity. I mean, I guess you could put a combustion engine on your house and siphon the gas out, but it's not as practical as electricity. And there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for us to make advancements that just makes that such a pliable thing. Transfer it to and from your phone, the unbelievable power and transferability of electricity. There's this. It's obviously the future, right? There's some idea that you have to be a hippie to think that electric cars are a good idea. No, you don't. From an engineering practicality standpoint, well, if we can get nuclear power or something like that to change this, and then we have all the ability to transfer all this electricity, just the same as we're running to the batteries and all these cameras and all this, and it's so elastic. It's unbelievably elastic. Maybe someday we'll discover something's better, and then we'll move to that. But for now, it's pretty badass.
Well, and then you always have to think of what are the legacy special interests. So coal is kind of, it's on its way out and it doesn't have that much power. But the petroleum industry, I mean, it's not only here, but we always come up against Saudi Arabia. So right now, where they're doing the climate talks, Saudi Arabia is the one that's causing most of the problems in the climate change talks that are happening internationally. And we don't talk enough about Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia controls a lot of what we do when it comes to energy policy.
Yeah.
And so we need to have a bigger discussion about the role that the oil industry internationally plays within our domestic politics.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Trump policies, he's talking about drilling here and getting local oil here. And there's a lot of unclear information when it comes to that. And obviously there's a lot of paid influence, but hypothetically, we could just get all of our oil here and be completely energy independent. There's no reason to believe that there's any more finiteness to the oil that's here than there is to there, because there's some talk about those oil reserves and all that stuff. I don't know. And even if, I got the current administration somehow to agree with me and move forward with nuclear, there's a lag there. Mm-hmm. So drilling you can do very quickly.
But you're giving a lot more power to that legacy special interest, and they spend a lot of money writing those campaign checks. Are they going to be on board with transitioning to something else? Or are they going to want to dig in their heels and say it's just going to be us?
Yeah.
Because, they already have a lot of power.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so you have to figure if you part of your plan is transitioning to something else, you have to account for the political influence of that legacy special interest.
It's not even sure. I mean, oil has so many uses that it's not fucking powering cars, right? Petroleum is in nylon. It's in
it's in
plastics.
plastics.
It's in
right. It's in everything.
Like, why do they care about turning it into gas? Is that the highest yield, I wonder? Or is it the highest thing that they can produce per dollar? Probably, I guess it is.
Wasn't corn syrup a byproduct of petroleum or something like that? Or wasn't there something that was a byproduct?
A yellow number 5 or something like that, you mean?
I don't remember now, but...
You're thinking of ethanol? I think you're thinking of ethanol.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, so from corn, you get ethanol that you can use mixed with gas to produce power?
Yeah, maybe. I guess it was something else.
The only thing I can think of that was a byproduct was like the red 5 or yellow 5 or whatever the hell it is. Something that's in the food.
Oh, that dye?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's from bugs. Red dye
No,
number
red dye
whatever.
is
Purple. Cochineal.
red dye itself is from bugs, but there's like yellow number 5 or something that they use to like dye Mountain Dew or something, and it's a byproduct of a process.
That's what we were watching.
Yeah. Just the same
RFK
as
Jr. I think was talking about that.
Yeah. He knows some stuff, I'll tell you that much.
He just goes on weird tangents sometimes. It's like, wait, where did you go?
Yeah, maybe. But
I know somebody like that. Sometimes.
yeah, what's wrong with weird tangents?
So many things are connected.
No, it's like,
they
well,
are.
okay, come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's one reason empires don't last very long is you get entrenched special interests that refuse to change, and then the society needs to evolve and it can't.
Yeah.
And so you always have to kind of build into your plan, not having too many entrenched special interests, and then how to keep them from stopping the evolution.
Yeah. How do we do that? Other than just companies being very diverse. But at the same time, it doesn't matter how diverse they are because their yields or their benefits for the thing that they already have in production are always going to be so much greater.
True.
And then subsidies is not exactly a winning strategy. So we've seen that backfire.
I mean, I always like to point to Las Vegas as a kind of an example of a lot of things, but I think the Strip is actually a really good example of accepting evolution. So we've gone from having 0 sports teams to having all the sports teams. And it takes a little bit. We've gone from only having taxis to also having Uber and Lyft. So there's ways to get them to come along. But I think sometimes it takes the political parties just standing up to them and saying, we're moving in this direction. You're going to have to go with us.
Yeah. I wonder just how you combat that in general, where people have an old way, they have a vested interest in it, and they're stopping the new thing. Like how, I don't know if there's a solution to that.
I mean, you don't want them to be overly threatened. And so especially with sports, obviously the casinos make a ton off the sports books. And so it's not that big of a leap to go ahead and invest in sports teams being here.
Yeah.
But if you're completely changing all the metrics and the incentives, then sometimes it just has to be for the greater good. But then you're going to have people, like when it came to Uber and Lyft coming in, Brian Sandoval was the governor. And Brian Sandoval was willing to stand up to the taxi authority and say, we are bringing in competition. End of discussion.
Yeah, and that sucked for them. There's a famous sort of analogy that we used to carve up lakes for ice. Mm-hmm. And none of the people carving up lakes for ice became the ice factories, which was the next evolution. And none of the people who ran ice factories became the refrigerator manufacturer, the freezer manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And so, like, paradigm shifts, they absolutely destroy people. And people have an incentive, not to, like, be destroyed. And even if they try to be a part of the next thing, that doesn't mean that they will, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just go off into oblivion.
Yeah.
History book doesn't know.
You have to make them understand that progress is the only way.
They understand, but they have a monetary, fiduciary responsibility, not even to themselves, but also their shareholders too, right? Like there's a lot of people that are connected to something that may die as a result of something else. And so how do we, as a society, move that along in a way that isn't so harmful and also is expedited?
We have to diversify. There has to be a way that you diversify and you think, well, sure, this is my main, but then how do I think of a different industry as well? Mm-hmm. And that way I can leverage the other.
What you have, right.
And start considering that if this one doesn't work.
And then we build into that training. So the automobile factories are going to go away because NAFTA, and it makes more sense for them to go to Mexico. And this was a huge mistake that we made, is that we didn't do anything for the automobile workers. It was like, go find a job someplace else. Well, most of them had been working just in that factory their whole life and didn't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is what Hillary Clinton got in trouble when she was in West Virginia and said, we're just going to shut down all the coal mines. Well, you have to, like you say, have something else that's just as attractive to go into. But then we have to have a training and community colleges or something else, tech schools, that says, hey, here's free training. Let's get you over there.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we don't. We just throw people out to the wolves and say, tough.
Now we're back to education.
Yes.
But I don't think if there are people that are living in the world, there's not usually one facet that someone super excels in and they don't know anything about anything else. And I think that's something for self-discovery that should be considered and done, and say, sure, you want to go become a doctor of people. Okay, well, you have to become a doctor of, maybe adults, and then you have to think of adolescent, because adolescent will become adults at some point.
Yep.
And there's just got to be a bigger picture that they have to think about. I can't just put all of the eggs in one basket. I don't like to use euphemisms that much, but you have to start thinking, okay, what's the other skill that I can develop? What else do I have if I don't have this?
Right.
Yeah, well, people need more exposure to jobs somewhere throughout the education process. People need to just be trying different jobs and trying different things. I think a lot of people miss their calling, and they might not if they tried different jobs. So more kind of apprenticeship, more kind of like...
Yes.
Community college for everyone.
Yes. Well, and that's... we can still charge for community college as long as it's reasonable. But what we're finding is if we can get apprenticeships for even like on the academic side of the house and grab the student as they're coming in, because employers right now are just begging for workers. They just don't have enough workers. But say, what are you thinking about doing? Okay, let's give you an apprenticeship in that and see if that actually fits for you.
Well, apprenticeships, we have to manage that because often that can be the learning person eats more resources than they deliver, usually.
Right now, employers are they need bodies.
Yeah.
Literally, they're just demanding bodies from us. But I've had students who thought, I should be a nurse. And then they go through this rigorous process, and then they become a nurse and think, oh, my God, I hate this. Mm-hmm. We need more of testing it out. Maybe do a semester of this, maybe do a semester of that. Let's figure out where you actually fit.
Yeah.
But as you were saying, let's say you pick this, even though you did this first, but then this goes away. Okay, well, that's still there. It's okay.
And then once you went on that route, now you got to figure out another thing.
But also anything. So intellect is derived from processing your experiences, right? It's your apperception of all of your things, conscious and subconscious. And so the more exposure that people have in general, the more broader their understanding of the world, the greater their problem solving capacities, the greater their intellect, quite literally. And sure, some people are born with a gift and can take more information from the same experience as someone else and process that in a more sophisticated way. But we should definitely be exposing more people to more things, right? People should understand what these things are. There's a lot of people who have strong opinions about stuff that they have no clue on. They've never been there. They've never seen it. You know, I think about how these like baristas want this money because they made a portion of the coffee, and they're like, well, I made the coffee and it's me and the company that owns this, you know, the Starbucks, and I should get a portion of that. What about the truck driver that delivered it there? What about the person that, you know, delivered the raw supplies to the factory? What about the people that worked in the factory? What about the people that make the spoons? What about the people that make the packaging for the spoons? What about the people that did the marketing? What about, you know, like, no way you should get a large cut of that. But the people who have those ideas are oblivious to the remainder of people involved. They have no clue. They think they're there handing that cup of coffee
They don't know the
that they
supply
did
chain.
this monumentous, and they have no clue. You know, they need the Milton Friedman School of whatever, right? But as much as you could show them a lecture from Milton Friedman, it's not nearly as good as people getting a taste of things. And people getting a taste of things, just being immersed in it is really going to like cause ideas to grow.
So when I was getting my PhD in history, they required us to do a minor in something else. We had to pick something else and do a certain number of credits. I already had enough credits to have almost a bachelor's degree in anthropology, so I picked anthropology, but specifically ethnography. And so ethnography is where you go and live among a group of people to study them and to find out about their culture. And the reason I picked that is because as a historian, you sit in a library or a special collection or a room just looking at pieces of paper or newspaper advertisements and things that are just a written word. The number of people who have been literate in world history is very small, and the number of people who are literate and then had the power to have their words be preserved is extremely small. So I wanted to have a lot of experience just listening to people. That's what ethnographers do. They go and they talk to actual living people, and they listen to them, and they find out about their experiences, and they ask questions about it. That's why I did that, because to me, the amount that I would know from just looking at documents would be super small. But if I was able to then add into my studies, just going out and talking to people and observing them and asking them questions, that I would be more well-rounded. And I was right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about how memes are delivering. So a lot of things throughout history are not documented. They're not.
Most of history's not.
The some of the, you know, so I was by the Pentagon during 9/11, and there's a lot of things after the fact that people talk about 9/11 that are not close to what I experienced, right? You know, first it was so I was there, we saw the smoke. They were like, it's a bomb, it's a this and that, they're bombing places. Then later it was this thing, and then I hear people who literally weren't there and didn't partake in that whole thing tell me, oh, we knew it was a plane the whole time, and we do this and that, and I'm like, no fucking way we did. No way. I was there. I was literally fucking there.
I was watching on TV and remember people not knowing what was going on.
Yeah, exactly. We had no clue what was going on. And now people are like, oh, they always knew this, or they always knew that, or oh, it was this and that. Like, what? No, it was unbelievably murky. And the whole situation, we had no clue as to whether or not any of this was connected or anything.
I mean, that's a good example because 9/11 was three separate things going on at the same time. You had the Twin Towers getting bombed, you had that plane that got hijacked, and you had the Pentagon get attacked.
Yeah.
So depending on where you were, if you were involved, your experience was going to be completely different.
Yeah, yeah. You're in Pennsylvania, you've got one perspective. You're near DC, you've got another. You're in the Northeast, you've got another. And then if you're outside of that, most people have the Northeast, secondary opinion. And you've got at least four perspectives
Right.
on how that's unfolding. There was all. But the point is a lot of that didn't get documented. And maybe now I'm going to document this, but I wonder how many things were like that in history because only a few amount of people had an input.
Yep.
And if you turn the clock back and we were in ye olde times, some of the DC thing might be practically freaking erased. We saw a play that the kids did at the school on 9/11. They didn't even talk about DC, right? You said there was one mention, but it was basically as if it didn't happen.
Yep.
Right. And, part of the idea is that they were New Yorkers in the play, and sure, that makes sense. But they talked about some other things about how it happened and then remembering it, and they didn't mention it. I was like, well, Jesus, what the hell? And so
That was an odd production. Very,
yeah.
very
Well,
strange.
And it's high school kids. But the point is, I think now with the way that social media is coming, sure, people are not necessarily typing about things, but now we're producing memes that give a consensus. And yeah, sometimes it's dumb and it's cartoony, it's oversimplified, but you're seeing more abstract things being presented in memes and more consensus that gives you an insight of what people are thinking in the zeitgeist that I don't think we've ever had. And I'm trying to think of one, but people are just like talking about like doom scrolling and stuff in memes and stuff like that. A lot of people sometime later are not really going to quite understand, how that was, or
It'll be a lot easier to document history on the one hand, because there's so much power for individuals to be able to speak into the historical record.
yeah.
Because before, it was a small group of people who were literate, even smaller group that got their documents preserved. Now, everybody can just put whatever they want out onto the interweb and be on social media. They can publish blogs. There's all kinds of things people can do. The problem for historians is how do you gather all that stuff up and then preserve it? And so if you're like in the Library of Congress or the National Archives or any of these big archiving agencies, they have to just keep up in transferring stuff that used to be on floppy disks that then went to CDs and then now is on a thumb drive and then got put over onto a streaming service. Just to make sure that we're trying to capture and preserve all of the things that people are putting out there to make sure that we have that on the record.
Yeah. Another thing I know, the people talk about the internet is forever, but no, stuff is really being lost.
Yeah.
I had an entire network of websites in the late 90s. And like, this is before the Internet Archive. This is before anything. They're gone. They're so gone. There's no trace.
Yep.
There's no nothing. Some stuff I see there is a trace because it was popular enough. It got enough whatever, and people took print screens. Entire things are just like disappearing from the internet like they never happened. There was this photographer I really liked, and like his work is basically all but gone now. Old medium, whatever, and like, so yeah, it's not all getting preserved. I know that, but I guess the general consensus of memes and the power to see mundane things be conveyed and a metric given to them that, oh wow, a lot of people are experiencing this really basic dumb thing, whatever it is in the meme,
Right.
and it's like, oh, that must have been what it's like to live in that time, which is I think something that I imagine if they had a meme when this country was founded, there might be some joke about like horse stepping in mud, splatting on you that was such a common ha-ha occurrence that we didn't even know. We wrote about it years later. I mean, we imagine that because
the funniest memes I've ever seen have been posted by my Native American friends on Thanksgiving. Something that's very traumatic for them, but the memes they post are hilarious. And it is. When you said that, I'm like having the Indians watching the Mayflower come up and they're going build a wall. Stuff like that. It's hilarious. It's funny. And it's just a picture with just a sentence. But they're conveying something that's very personal to them.
Yeah, sure. I wonder, yeah, I have opinions on that perspective too, right? Like that goes back to the ice factories thing and like this is new way of life and this and it's coming very quickly. And then I don't know, I thought I lost it. But yeah, there's lots of complications to that. And is that even really what their people near that time would feel, or is this some consensus that is now far removed and derived and is overly political in nature, right? That's something I wonder about too. But yeah, so you've probably ridden like red. English is getting hard, apparently. You've probably read firsthand sources for encounters with the natives. Some of that is like so different than what I had imagined. And it makes so much sense because I had problems with interacting with the natives in the Middle East and other places I've been. So, yeah, they like just really are stubborn and clueless on certain things. It's painful, and of course, how could they know these concepts?
No, and then from their perspective is, okay, hey, you're new. Hi, how are you? But then the people coming in tend to be like, well, why don't you understand this? Everybody knows this. And it's oftentimes when two cultures come together, you're going to have that. I teach Native American history as well. And I think I have a whole lecture on imperialism and interaction and kind of the evolution that it took. In many instances, contact between Europeans and Native Americans was transactional. Europeans showed up with trade goods. Native Americans wanted it. The Europeans wanted things like furs and gold and silver, and the Indians were willing to trade it, and it was very transactional, and everybody got along. Mm-hmm. The biggest issue was actually the transference of germs, disease. Mm-hmm. That Europeans had contact with things like smallpox for a long time and influenza because they had domesticated animals. Native Americans did not. And so when that transaction, just trading goods back and forth, as soon as smallpox jumped over, you're decimating a population. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the tragedy that ends up happening with contact is something that couldn't have been controlled for, and that was disease because people didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
But then you also have to look at the way that the missionaries behaved, and that's where most of the abuse ended up happening. You have Christians going to convert other people to Christianity, and in doing so, killing them. And so if you talk about kind of morals and ethics, if you're a Christian and you're not supposed to be killing people and stealing from them, you really should have behaved like a Christian should have. And that's where I focus on the problems with contact. It wasn't the economic transaction. That usually wasn't a problem. It was when you had Christianity introduced. That's when you usually started having a lot of abuse happen between Europeans and Native Americans.
Yeah. Well, I know that a big part of the problem is the time difference as far as human progress was so massive. I mean, they had not discovered the wheel here, right? They were not making very sophisticated tools.
And we were built temples and pyramids, and they had massive architecture as well.
I mean, stacking blocks is not the same as the wheel, right?
Have you ever been to Teotihuacan? And if you go to Mexico City and the pyramids that are they're pretty sophisticated. And Native Americans adopted the technology pretty easily. That didn't bother them as much. It was, I want to do an economic transaction with you, and I would like to replace all your gods. That's when you would run into trouble.
Sure. But but even that's not great. But you grow up in a society that has the wheel and metalworking and all these other things. You have a wildly different perspective than somebody that's just being introduced to these things. I was reading a lot of the firsthand stuff, and it was just a lot of like frustration at how they couldn't understand. There was one thing I barely remember, but basically the natives felt like they were superior in technology and thoughts and whatever. Which camera did we lose?
Mine.
Okay.
People just tend to think that they're very egocentric about themselves being right and being superior. I mean, that tends to be just the way human beings
Sure.
will be.
It seemed that these natives felt that there was their job to show the newcomers their better way of life. And there was a lot of frustration with that because they were like, no. What you're doing is wrong. All this is wrong. You should be simpler. You should be this. It's smarter. It's better. And there was a lot of clash with that in the one thing that I had looked at. And it's like, yeah, how are you going to deal with that? And I guess that takes me back to the crazy story I had in Iraq. So story time, I guess. So I was dealing with a native person and to Iraq, and we were trying to get them to work with us to do a certain thing. And he wouldn't work with us, and he wouldn't tell us why. And I was like, why? And eventually we finally got to this point where we had this sit-down conversation. Mm-hmm. And he basically said it was because we're evil. I said, well, why are we evil? Right? And I know there's war. I know there's stuff going on. He's like, no, not that. He's like, we know war. You guys are evil. And I was like, what are we doing that's so evil? Because, they'd been in conflict, so much conflict. And so then he tells me that we use demons to kill people. And that he eventually goes on to describe this process of, at night, we release these demons with these green eyes that go through and kill people. Mm-hmm. And then we hide them in the day so that nobody knows that we're using demons to kill people. And I was like, what? And eventually it turns out it's just, soldiers operating at night because it's colder and we have night vision and we have the night advantage. But you couldn't convince him that that's what was going on. He had the solid belief that we had actual demons that we caged up and released that would just go crawl on the side of buildings and kill people. I mean, he'd really just this thing, because I asked him about like specific things, and he's like, I know because my friend saw in this area and this and that. Right. And I would, look into it, and it was just basically basic soldiers moving through with night vision because it's easier to move at night because it's colder than the hot, and then you have night vision, you have the superior advantage, so you why wouldn't you, right? And so we did that a lot. And you would just sit during the day and then move at night. And so that's the perception, is like we sit during day, but then to him, we release the demons at night and then we can move up, they clear the way. But yeah, I was like, whoa.
But it makes sense that he was trying to, in his mind, figure out what he was seeing or what he heard somebody else saw.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the brain is always asking why, and then trying to make sense out of it.
And then you realize these people don't have electricity. They're not watching movies.
Right.
The idea that you can even have light of color is probably foreign to them. And then to go so far as you can use these things that have lights in them to see at night is fantastical. So I had to take a journey through his perspective to understand how he would arrive at this.
And then how much do you explain to him?
Yeah, we didn't get that far. I forget how that ended. I think we just cut our losses, but I think it did convince him some, but I think that he didn't end up having what we needed anyway. So I don't know what a close is, actually. I haven't thought that far ahead.
Sondra, thank you so much for coming out to talking to us about your background. We really appreciate this time. I know we talked about a lot of things you've already talked about, but it's nice to have a new perspective and for you guys to talk.
Yeah, thank you.
I will always spend time talking.
Yeah.
because we
Good.
don't do enough of it.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on with us.
Yeah.
Uncharted with Bo.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, good. You're hired.